This time around. We spoke to
this is all July 21st, 2020.
I mean, I have so many friends, like from high school and even from middle school, who went to college because that's what they think they need to do, I guess.
But Horowitz, now 19, didn't follow that path, getting a GED, starting his own business, a bakery, and so far it's working. He can't keep up with demand.
The thing that I found is just something that I love to do, and I can do every day, and I can get really good at, and I found that in high school, and I just decided I'm just going to pursue it.
As college costs climb and universities move instruction online, more students are asking what sorts of jobs they can get without an undergrad degree.
The good news is there are a tremendous amount of opportunities for people that do not have a college degree. You know, not only in the traditional trade jobs like construction and electrical workers, plumbing, carpentry, but you also see it in healthcare.
And you don't have to settle. Making six figures is not uncommon. Pilots, police supervisors, and others make roughly $100,000 a year, even though jobless rates are typically higher for those without the degree. Well, to be sure, college grads make more than those without the degrees, $30,000 a year as a matter of fact, but factor in this, the cost of carrying that college debt, $400 a month on average, plus what economists call the opportunity cost of being out of the labor force for 4 years and the resultant salaries. Think about it, that extra money you think you're going to get with your degree may not be as much as you expected. Bill?
How about the tuition fee for a classroom that never happens, Jerry? Think they get by with that at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio? Do you, Jerry, I ask you?
Miss my Miami, don't you, my friend?
Nice to see you. Nice to see your red today, Jerry. We'll see you soon. Thank you. So the NFL said to be sweetening the deal to try and get the season started on time. That league offering to cancel all preseason games in the latest back and forth with the players' union. That's according to the Associated Press. The two sides have already agreed on some safety measures, including daily coronavirus testing, at least during training camp. Rookies reporting for duty today. Preseason have been one game, might be zero. Dr. Anthony Fauci has a special appointment in D.C. this week, in addition to his duties during the pandemic. He will throw out the first pitch of the delayed Major League Baseball season Thursday. The reigning World Series champs, the Washington Nationals, host the New York Yankees on Thursday night. Fauci's a self-proclaimed fan of the Nats, and the team calls him a true champion for our country. We will see that season get underway on Thursday. Welcome back. They've almost done it. We'll keep it safe. Here Monday to Friday, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Set your DVR. Never miss a report. In the meantime, David is in for Neil right now.
And Fox on top of two briefings about to go down, one on the escalating violence in Portland. Acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf is going to be providing an update on that. The other on the coronavirus. President Trump will be leading a news conference on where things stand right now as cases ramp up. Welcome, everybody. I'm David Asman in for Neil Cavuto, and this is Your World. We've got Fox team coverage with John Roberts at the White House and Dan Springer following the violence in Portland and Seattle. Let us begin with John. Big day there, John.
It always is, David. There's never a dull moment here at the Trump White House. This is the first time that the president will have led a coronavirus briefing since he appeared in the Rose Garden with Admiral Giroir back in May. It was May the 11th. The president was talking about testing back then, but a lot has happened since, including these big spikes in coronavirus cases. So the president is sure to get a lot of questions about that, as well as an increase in the number of deaths. Schools not reopening in many jurisdictions. The latest to say that they're probably going to go with online learning to start the school year is Fairfax County, just outside of D.C., and many states, of course, having to roll back reopenings. The president also likely to get asked about the White House position on more money for testing in the Phase 4 relief bill that's being negotiated in the Senate. Democrats claim that the White House is trying to block new money for testing, but the White House says it just wants to make sure that that money goes to the right place. Here's what Kayleigh McEnany said at her daily briefing earlier today. Listen here.
No one is blocking any money from testing. One of the things I would add is that this is an ongoing negotiation. We're just in the early days of that. Currently in federal coffers, we have $10 billion, that's with a B, unspent, that is allocated for testing. We're willing to put in money for targeted testing that makes sense, not just dumping money into a pot that already contains $10 billion.
Now, it's a little bit of a mystery what's going to happen at 5 o'clock this afternoon, David. We do not know who will be appearing with the president at the briefing. They're kind of holding that as a bit of a surprise. But it is also becoming clear that this is not just going to be a briefing about coronavirus. The president will entertain other subjects as well. I think it's an opportunity for him to get out there in front of the American people since he can't hold any of these big political rallies. So the president wants to be seen as being presidential, doing his job. One of the topics that he could possibly talk about is whether or not he'll be sending more federal law enforcement officers into cities across America. And as you pointed out, this hour, Chad Wolf, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, will be having a briefing about the situation in Portland and the federal response to that. David?
Well, one thing we do know, and you know only too well, is that it is 99 degrees in Washington, D.C. today.
I love it.
And you might love it, but it's a tough day to wear a mask, but there is a lot of question about whether the president will be wearing one. We'll see. Thank you.
I doubt if he'll be wearing one in the briefing room.
John Roberts, good to see you, my friend. Thank you. Have fun today. The Department of Homeland Security holding a news conference, as John just mentioned, moments from now on what it calls the, quote, violence, chaos, and anarchy in Portland. This as Portland officials are fighting to get federal agents out of the city. Dan Springer has the very latest. In fact, the press conference is just about, Dan, we're going to get back to you because the press conference is beginning. There is Acting Director Chad Wolf. Let's listen.
Federal properties, mainly the Mark Hatfield Federal Courthouse. The department's mission is very clear. We are charged with protecting federal facilities across the country. We have been protecting the courthouse in downtown Portland since 1997 when it first opened. We began to see a rise in violent activity targeting federal facilities in late May in Portland, coinciding with the death of George Floyd. Let me reiterate that the department fully supports those who wish to peacefully protest. Let me say this again, we support and we will protect those who want to peacefully protest. Unfortunately, what we are seeing in Portland every night, roughly from midnight to 4:30 or 5 a.m., is the complete opposite. Again, what is occurring in Portland in the early hours of every morning is not peaceful protesting. These individuals are organized and they have one mission in mind: to burn down or to cause extreme damage to the federal courthouse and to law enforcement officers. At times, we also see them targeting city property. These individuals congregate in the same area night after night. We see them planning their attacks. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action to stop or disperse this crowd. These individuals carry lasers, baseball bats, explosive fireworks, metal pipes, glass bottles, accelerants, and other weapons, all targeting federal facilities and federal law enforcement. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action. These individuals have repeatedly destroyed protective fencing, extensively graffitied the courthouse, torn plywood down from the courthouse and then lit it on fire, have erected barriers to block entrances to courthouses, attempted to breach the courthouse, have thrown explosive materials in the courthouse, and again, the city of Portland takes little to no action. The reasons increased DHS personnel are important, or in Portland, is twofold. One, violent criminal activity every single night for 52 nights. And two, the lack of action from city officials and law enforcement. Department law enforcement officers are there to protect a symbol of justice, the courthouse. We mostly do that in a very defensive posture. However, we have been forced, because of lack of local law enforcement presence, to take measures such as arrest to protect our officials. The law is clear on what our authority entails. Specifically, federal statute states that the Secretary of Homeland Security, and I'm quoting, shall protect buildings, grounds, and property that are owned, occupied, and secured by the federal government. The law goes on to state that the department can conduct investigations, again I'm quoting, on and off property in question, on offenses that may have been committed against property owned and occupied by the federal government or persons on that property. In other words, we are expressly allowed to leave federal property to conduct investigations and arrest individuals who have damaged federal property. We do this, of course, in conjunction with the Department of Justice. Many of our law enforcement officers in Portland have other responsibilities around the country. They are away from their families and putting their lives at risk every night. The smear attacks leveled against our officers is disgusting. As it relates to CBP officers deployed in Portland, these highly trained officers are in multi-camouflage wear because they work on the southwest border and they work in an environment that demands that. That is their everyday uniform, and it is completely appropriate. They have insignia on their uniforms that read police, and they have patches, and the acting commissioner will talk about that in a little bit, that indicate which agency they are from. Let me repeat, these officers are not military. Let's not confuse that. I've seen inaccurate press reporting accusing them of being military. They are not military. They are civilian police officers. These police officers are not stormtroopers. They are not the Gestapo, as some have described them. That description is offensive, it's hyperbolic, and it's dishonest. And every law enforcement officer and every reasonable American knows this. While I look forward to the day that our officers are redeployed back to their regular day-to-day mission, we will not shrink from our duty because of this violence. I've heard the mayor of Portland recently state that the federal government is to blame for this violence. Rational people know that is not true. He would have you believe that enforcing federal law incites violence. He would have you believe that holding criminals accountable incites violence. In the last 52 days, Portland has declared a riot on numerous occasions because of this nightly violence. And while this action helps, unfortunately, they only take this action when city officials or local law enforcement are targeted, not federal. On July 3rd, before any surge of DHS law enforcement resources arrived in Portland, the mayor said the violence, and I quote, has been going on for more than a month now. Groups continue to target the Justice Center. They continue to hurt small businesses. And these attacks undermine public safety. These words are true today as they were before DHS law enforcement arrived in the city of Portland. My message is very simple. If you're looking to peacefully protest in Portland, the department respects your right to do so. Please do so away from the violent activity that is taking place near the courthouse on a nightly basis for your own safety. If you are a violent rioter looking to inflict damage to federal property or law enforcement officers, you need to find another line of work. We will not retreat. We will continue to take the appropriate action to protect our facilities and our law enforcement officers. If you're a local leader, now is the time to step up and protect your community. Work with the department and other federal authorities in Portland to responsibly bring this nightly violence to a close. And if you're in the media, report the facts, all the facts. Do not glamorize the anarchists and the criminals. And do not perpetuate the false narratives many of us have seen recently. I pulled two headlines before coming down here today. One, U.S. official calls protest anarchist. Inaccurate and very misleading. Individuals trying to set fire to a building are no longer protesting, they are criminals. I, or any other senior official at the department, has no problem with peaceful protesters. Said that a couple of times, I'll say that again. Second headline, unidentified federal agents are detaining protesters in Portland. Again, inaccurate and false. As you've heard I say, you'll hear Acting Commissioner Morgan say, all officers are identified as police law enforcement officers. We are only targeting and arresting those who have been identified as committing criminal acts, like any other law enforcement agency does across the country every single day of the week. We all have a responsibility to condone the violent activity that is occurring night after night. I was in Portland last week. It's a beautiful city, but unfortunately I saw buildings and businesses shut down and boarded up. I was briefed that the violence has cost the city businesses roughly $23 million in lost revenue. We cannot let one of our cities continue to experience this lawlessness night after night. Let me turn it over now to Chris Klein, who's our Deputy Director of our Federal Protective Service, FPS. FPS has the mission to protect federal property across the country. Deputy Director Klein will walk you through the role of FPS, as well as an operational summary of the past few nights. After that, we'll have Acting CBP Commissioner Mark Morgan. We'll talk to you about the role that CBP is playing in Portland. Thank you.
We will continue to monitor this press conference. A really historic moment. I don't think we've seen a moment like this since the riots in the 1960s, when federal authorities were brought in, or even before that, when federal officers were brought in to desegregate the South against the wishes of some of the local officials. But that's essentially what is at play here. Local officials are taking one position on the federal authorities coming in and arresting people, and the federal authorities are taking another position, and federal agents are going to continue to go into these communities that the administration says are completely out of control and are being destroyed, where citizens are being put in danger by anarchists and others, not the peaceful protesters, but by the anarchists, and therefore the federal agents will continue to go into these areas and arrest people as seen. He also, of course, Chad Wolf, the acting Homeland Security Director, was suggesting that a lot of the headlines were incorrect, suggesting that these officers were going in as unidentified individuals, some even going to an extreme of saying that they were stormtroopers going in unannounced and unidentified to arrest people. He was making the case that is not so. With me now is Homeland Security Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli. Thank you for staying with us, Ken. I appreciate you being here. How exactly are these federal agents identified? I mean, are they distinguishable from the police officers and others?
Very easy to answer. So a CBP officer there in Portland has police on the front, police on the back, and on both arms they have their Customs Border Protection and Department of Homeland Security identification as well. They also have an individualized, like a badge number on their sleeve, so they can be individually identified, but not their name because of the doxing of law enforcement and the threats to their families that has posed. So every single officer and agent interacting with the crowds there has that sort of identification on them. And when they approach an individual who may be a suspect or who may be a witness, they verbally identify themselves as federal agents as well. And of course, they've been wearing the same thing with the same crowd every day for a number of weeks now. Now, the violence predates our expanded presence there by more than a month, as you heard the Secretary just describe. But these crowds have seen these officers wearing the same uniforms day after day, doing their job, all while the criminals and rioters do their thing.
Now, I mentioned that there are parallels to what we're seeing here, as horrible as seeing our cities be destroyed in parts. We have seen these things in the past. In the 60s, there were riots. And we have seen the use of federal troops in the past. Of course, they were used to desegregate the South in many cases, particularly the universities and the schools that had segregation, Jim Crow segregation laws. Federal troops were sent in against the wishes of the local authorities. So do you see that as a kind of parallel with what's happening now?
I think that's was a more widespread and more severe situation than what you're seeing now. I mean, just in Portland, we were doing what we're doing now 2 years ago when the mayor of Portland publicly announced that when one of our facilities was being attacked, that he was withdrawing police support, local police support. And as you heard the Secretary mention, we count on those partnerships. Where those partnerships exist, we don't have to expand our officers on the ground because we achieve more working together. But you have a mayor and a political leadership in Portland that blocks their law enforcement officers from working together with us. So they make all of us less efficient and they make their communities less safe, all on purpose, which is just mind-boggling.
All right, let me get to the issue of the constitutionality of all this, and it may indeed be challenged in the courts. Judge Andrew Napolitano, our legal expert here, mentioned what he sees as an unconstitutional view of what's happening there. Let me play the soundbite and get your reaction. Go ahead and play it.
The federal government cannot put troops or military personnel or police on the streets without the invitation of the governor or the legislature of the state. That's not only federal law, that's in the Constitution. And as horrific as it is for people who believe in the sanctity of the person and of private property to watch this destruction, there's very little that the feds can do about it. What happened in Portland over the weekend, David, was not only unlawful and unconstitutional, it was just plain wrong.
Now, I understand that you don't agree with that position, but there are a lot of people who do, and it may, in fact, be taken to the courts. Are you prepared to argue it, or are you going to go ahead with the force necessary to quell these disturbances?
Yeah, look, I appreciate other people don't agree with advancing more aggressive and responsible policing, but, and I tweeted about Napolitano's comments there about how wrong they were. He said it's in statute. No, in statute is that we will defend these properties and these facilities, just as the secretary not only noted, he quoted the law. And you cannot find in the Constitution somewhere it says federal law enforcement officers can't go do their job at federal facilities in and around them to exercise federal authority to protect federal law. That's
I'm not a legal expert by any means. I know just as much as anybody knows about it.
No, I'm not accusing you. I'm just passionate about it, and he's so wrong.
My question is whether you are prepared to defend it, if necessary, all the way to the Supreme Court, or whether you will just keep going on with what you're doing.
Yeah, we certainly are well within the boundaries of the law and the Constitution. This is a layup of a win for anybody who would find a way to legally challenge us protecting federal facilities under federal law and executing arrests for people who violate that or attack those officers. That is just, it is legally easy to defend, and I am a legal expert. I don't have any problem saying that. And it's really a policy argument that you hear as opposition. But let's look at just left-wing mayors. In Minneapolis, they took the same approach. Oh, we'll just give them room to riot, and surely they'll be nice and they'll love us all. Well, it got worse, and it got worse. Even that mayor, even that city council started to advance more aggressive, responsible policing to take back their own city.
I only have about 30 seconds before your satellite goes down, but I want to ask about Antifa and whether RICO statute, a federal statute, will be used to try to get inside of Antifa, find out who's involved, who's funding it, etc. And finally, is Antifa a terrorist organization?
Well, Antifa, as that word is used, is probably not one organization. There's a different one in Washington than there is in Portland and so forth. But organized intentional violence can qualify under RICO statutes for prosecution. That's a Department of Justice question more than Department of Homeland Security, because we do law enforcement, they do prosecution, but that is an available tool under these circumstances.
Ken Cuccinelli, the acting Deputy Director of Homeland Security, great to see you, my friend. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Well, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows wrapping up a meeting with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer on the new coronavirus relief bill. Chad Pergram keeping track of those talks on Capitol. A lot to keep track of here inside the Beltway right now this summer. Summers are supposed to be lazy, not this one.
Yeah, this is going to be a busy couple of weeks here as they try to knock out this bill. This is the first round of negotiations. He met with the Senate Republicans earlier today. Mnuchin and Meadows did. They're in with the Speaker right now. And the key here is going to be what Senate Republicans decide to do. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, indicates that he wants to write the bill. Says he's going to release that in the next couple of days. He's going to write it in his office so he gets buy-in from Republican senators. That does not sit well with Democrats. Listen.
Bill in your own office without any input from Democrats, dropping it on the floor and demanding that Democrats support it is no one's idea of bipartisanship. You can't fool the American people with these facile words that just don't ring true.
McConnell says he's aiming for a bill costing about $1 trillion. I asked the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, earlier in the Capitol if they were worried about the cost. He said, quote, "We will spend what we need to spend." Now, some Republicans are leery about even doing another bill. As we say on Capitol Hill, it's about the math, it's about the math, it's about the math. And McConnell can only lose for Republicans without needing Democratic help.
I think that's a starting place for discussion with the Democrats. Clearly, they have the ability to prevent us from passing anything. I think it's pretty clear they're not irrelevant. We do have to talk to them.
Now, can they get this done here? House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has indicated she wants something done by the end of next week. Going into the meeting, Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, indicated that there's kind of an artificial deadline here because unemployment insurance benefits expire at the end of July. They also have to have a discussion about more direct payments. Would they have more? Would they have less?
Right.
What would that look like, and would that be part of the bill, David?
What a mess. By the way, Senator John Kennedy, the very quotable Senator John Kennedy, will be with us later in this hour. You don't want to miss his take on what's happening there. Thank you very much, Chad. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, down Pennsylvania Avenue, President Trump will be holding a coronavirus task force briefing in less than an hour from now. What does my next guest want to hear in that? Dr. Nicole Saphier joins me now. Doctor, good to see you. What specifically are you going to be listening for, not only from the president himself, but also from the doctors who will be there?
Well, David, the time is now that the president needs to address the coronavirus outbreak again, because too much time has gone on, and this is the #1 issue that Americans are facing right now. First and foremost, I want to hear about point-of-care testing, because I'll tell you, when you go to your local urgent care or your LabQuest or CityMD or wherever you're going, and they're quoting 5 to 10 day wait for the results, that is absolutely unacceptable when we know that people are most transmissible during that early time. I also want to hear about an update on the treatments. I mean, there's really good evidence that an inhalant, interferon beta, is actually having some great results in keeping people out of the ICU. We know COVID-19 is here to stay for a little bit, so we need to have these updates. We need to know that there are treatments in the works, and we also need to know that they're doing everything possible to make sure that these are accessible and affordable to Americans as we move forward. And I also want to hear more about, in regards to the testing, what about the combination test that the president has already authorized emergency use for, the combination between COVID and flu? We're heading into the flu season. August marks the beginning of flu season. We need to amp up our testing, and we have to do it now.
Yeah.
Because as we go into the flu season, as schools begin to open up, we need that rapid testing.
Hey.
I would love to see a vaccine update. I know Dr. Birx loves to show us the PowerPoints and the slideshows. I want to know which companies are where, what the results are they showing. You know, we've had a little bit of discouraging news recently showing that antibodies tend to decrease after about a month or two. But the good news is it's not just about the antibody response. There's also
Doctor,
a T-cell response when it comes to being able to fight the virus.
Forgive me for interrupting, but there's some other good news, which is that the COVID mortality rate is coming down. Of course, it's a lagging indicator. We may find that not to be so in the coming weeks, but in from June 30th to now, the COVID mortality rate has dropped 23%. Is that because of the therapeutics that you were talking about before?
Great point. And globally now, the global fatality rate has dipped below 1%, which is what we anticipated early on to happen. This is for a multitude of factors, one of them being that we do have treatments now. It's taken several months to figure out what works, but we do have several players that are showing effectiveness of keeping people alive, of keeping people out of the ICU. We're also protecting our vulnerable a lot more. When the virus first got here, we were given no information from China as to how the virus spreads or who's most vulnerable. We came up with that information ourselves, and we now know how to protect our vulnerable, the elderly, those with comorbidities, and those people are still keeping themselves safe, and we as Americans are doing what we can to keep those family members safe. And lastly, it's really important that I want to hear President Trump discuss and address going to school opening. It's not about temperature checks. We know that that has nothing to do with this. I want to know how they're going to support our schools getting those kids
should we not
back in class.
open the schools? Should we or should we not open the schools?
I absolutely think moving forward we need to do everything possible to get our kids back in class. That is most important for them, but the schools will need support. We need to figure out what we can do to get those kids back there, and it's not about temperature checks.
Dr. Nicole Saphier, great to talk to you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. We'll all be watching very closely what happens inside the White House today. So, to the White House in Capitol Hill, where the coronavirus is front and center, Republican Senator John Kennedy on relief negotiations that are now underway, and Bret Baier on what the president has to say, coming right up right here.
Today started like any other day. You got up, showered, brushed your teeth, got on your Seltos, and took a shortcut through the desert. I wonder what people without all-wheel drive capability are doing right now. Introducing the all-new Seltos.
Attention, the makers of Roundup have set aside over $10 billion for victims of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
If you used Roundup and were then diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, call the Goldwater Law Firm.
Call us right now to see if you qualify for an out-of-court settlement.
Call now, and in less than 2 minutes you can find out if you may qualify.
If you used Roundup and were then diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, call 1-800-218-7900 or go to myrounduplawsuit.com.
Are you tired of using towels you think are going to be amazing, but don't actually dry you? They just push water around on your skin.
Other towels seem to smear the water on your skin because of the coatings.
After I dry off, my skin is still wet.
You deserve a better towel. Introducing MyPillow Towels, the first towel that is guaranteed to dry you faster.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm here to tell you about my new product from MyPillow. Towels that actually work. I've created the best towel ever where it actually feels soft but dries us. What a concept.
The new MyPillow towels are exclusively made with 100% USA combed cotton with proprietary technology and with maximum absorbency. They dry you faster and are guaranteed to work. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now. When you use the promo code on your screen, Mike will include a second full towel set absolutely free. That's 2 MyPillow towel sets for the price of 1.
Watch this demonstration. Here's another towel that we randomly went out and bought. Here's one of my towels with the nice design. Watch this absorbency test. I don't know if you can see this, but you could line a swimming pool with this. I mean, this is crazy. Get rid of it. Towels that actually work.
With the MyPillow towel, the first time I used it, I couldn't believe how quick my hair was dry.
I really love the towels. They're really great. They're super absorbent.
Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen right now. The new MyPillow towels are exclusively made with 100% USA combed cotton with proprietary technology and with maximum absorbency. They dry you faster and are guaranteed to work. And listen to this. Use the promo code on your screen and Mike will include a second full towel set with bath towel, hand towel, and washcloth absolutely free. That's 2 MyPillow towel sets for the price of 1 in your choice of color.
I personally guarantee they're going to be the best towels you'll ever own.
Order now.
So what are we going to hear from the president, and what can we expect from Congress on COVID relief? Republican Senator John Kennedy, special report anchor Brett Baer, they're coming up. Stay tuned.
Your house brought you together, like really together. And although together is great, together with more space is better. With Rocket Mortgage, you get personalized loan options, closing costs, and tax estimates all in real time. So when you need to know what it takes for a home to fit your budget and your family, Rocket can.
Amazon fulfillment center, it's like walking into the chocolate factory and you want a golden ticket. All of these are face masks. This looks like a bottle of vodka. When we first got these, we were like, whoa! My 3-year-old, when we get a box delivered, screams, "Mommy's work." Mommy, what? With this pandemic, safety is even more important to make sure we go home safe every single day.
Universal child care, elder care, you name it care. Democrat presidential candidate Joe Biden outlining a $775 billion plan to offer it, but who pays for it? To Fox News' Jackie Heinrich with more. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, David. Well, the plan aims to expand access to and lower the cost of caregiving, both for children and for the elderly. The former vice president highlighted how coronavirus has forced schools to close, leaving parents struggling to balance jobs and childcare while also caring for aging parents. His plan would make pre-kindergarten universal for 3- and 4-year-olds, increase pay for childcare workers through new state standards and federal minimum wage laws, and create new childcare facilities through tax breaks. He claims it would also allow 800,000 people waiting for home and community care through Medicaid to get off the waiting list by giving states funding for services like meals, day programs for seniors, and rides to appointments. The campaign says the $775 billion plan would employ 3 million Americans in new care and education jobs, ultimately allowing about 5 million to go back to work by reducing constraints at home.
You know, we're trapped in a caregiving crisis, within an economic crisis, within a healthcare crisis. You're doing everything you can, but this president is not.
Biden's proposal would be paid for over 10 years through reducing tax breaks for real estate investors making more than $400,000 a year, and also increasing tax compliance for high earners. But the Trump campaign clapped back, writing, "Biden just said he knows families are being squeezed financially and emotionally right now. Just wait until they learn about what Joe Biden plans to do with their tax bill and their electrical bill." Now, Biden did not take any questions, but he slammed the president for, quote, quitting on Americans amid the pandemic, not wanting it to distract from his campaign. David.
Jackie, thank you very much. Well, meantime, the Florida Education Association is suing Republican Governor Ron DeSantis and the state's Department of Education in an attempt to stop schools from reopening at the end of August. Frederick Ingram heads up that union and this move to sue. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. So what exactly would it take in the statistics or by whatever measurement you're using for you to accept school reopenings?
Sure. Well, let me say this. Personally, as a high school band director, and speaking on behalf of all the public school educators, we want to be back in school. We can't wait to get back in school. In fact, we miss our kids. This is what we do. We pledge our lives for many years to do that. But against the backdrop of over 360,000 positive cases of COVID, 5,000 deaths, and a positivity rate that is still in the 20th percentile, it is just unsafe for us to go back to school right now, given the circumstances that we have. We've got to get control of this virus. We've got to see some kind of decline. We've got to offer our teachers PPE. We've got to deal with the infrastructure with our school system that are built for social interaction and not social distancing.
But
and so we've got to re-engineer.
We have to see some kind of decline. That's pretty vague. Can you be more specific? What specifically, what numbers are you looking at that would make you feel satisfied to reopen?
Absolutely. Well, the federal government and the CDC phase 1 said that they would like to see a 14-day decline. And so that's what we're sticking to. We have never, as a state, gotten to phase 2 at all. In fact, in many cases in our state, we have rolled back between Miami-Dade County and Broward and West Palm Beach and other rural areas. We've actually rolled back to phase 1. And so we need to see those declines. We need to see our positivity rates go down and our ICUs usage go down. In
But a 14-day decline. That's a very specific figure, and we appreciate that. That gives us something to chew on. Now, this is the argument made by a lot of people for reopening, that 30 children in the United States, 30, under the age of 15 have died of COVID. Now, one death is a tragedy. You have to say that. It's absolutely true. I mean it. But 190 children die of the flu each year, and we don't close schools for that. So do the stats really justify a closing?
Listen, we don't want to play, or we don't want to play truth or dare with any child. We don't want to play duck, duck, goose or musical chairs.
We have 190 children dying every year with the flu, and we keep the schools open for that. We have 30 children dying of COVID. So, why not close for the flu then?
We live in the epicenter of this coronavirus. There's so many unanswered questions that we don't have. The problem that we're having is that we know that this virus is so transmittable, and we don't know what the impacts are going to be for children who live in multi-generational homes, children who have siblings, children who have brothers and sisters that might have an underlying issue, teachers that are over the age of 60 who go back in our classrooms, and what that transmittal will mean so that our kids won't be vectors. We have so many unanswered questions precautions that we cannot simply say we're just going to go hell or high water, full speed ahead with opening of schools.
Well, I don't think anybody's saying hell or high water. I think people are just looking specifically at the stats for kids and wondering whether with social distancing, as they've been doing in Europe and Asia, by the way, and they haven't had these massive reoccurrences that have been feared. By the way, NBC last week asked 5 doctors who were involved in pediatrics whether they would send their own kids to return to school, and every one of them said, yes, I would let my kids go back to school. I will. My kids are looking forward to it. Yes, period. Absolutely. Absolutely, as much as I can without hesitation. So the doctors are saying that it's okay to send kids back to school. Why don't you listen to them?
Sure. Well, it depends on what doctors you're talking to and what day you're talking to them. Again, there are so many unanswered questions. But let me also clarify. The executive order in the state of Florida says that we will have a brick and mortar option come the first day of school. That's 3 weeks away. In fact, our teachers and our educational support professionals are going back 2 weeks in 2 weeks.
I hate to interrupt you, but we have this DHS presser going on. We've got to go back to it. We thank you very much. Please come back and see us again. Again, this is the Department of Homeland Security talking about the unrest in our cities. Let's listen.
Specifically, your agency is acting like an authoritarian regime, especially because you have the governor of Oregon saying that she spoke to you, specifically Secretary Wolf, and said that she doesn't want your officers in her state, that she doesn't need them, that they're escalating tensions.
Well, what I would say is if you did your job from a local perspective, we wouldn't be there. Just like we're not in any other city with this type of deployment force having to protect other courthouses. The fact that we are there is because local officials are not taking action. They are not protecting, they're not helping to address the situation. I think that is the key difference in whether we look at any other metropolitan city that FPS has facilities that they are protecting. They have a partnership with local law enforcement and they help protect that facility. They'll help make local arrests. They'll help disperse crowds. They'll help do a variety of things when violent activity is occurring. That is not taking place in Portland. So that's the difference between what we see in Portland and what we see any other place. Now, regarding whether it was the mayor or the Portland, the governor not wanting us there, okay, I appreciate that. We still have a job to do. So we're going to have to continue to protect that federal facility. What we know is if we left tomorrow, they would burn that building down. I'm sure you're not advocating for that, but they would burn that building down. They have stated that publicly. We know they've tried, we have them on video trying that multiple different times. So we have a responsibility. I read it to you. It says the secretary shall protect buildings. It doesn't say you can. It doesn't give me the option. It says I shall. So I'm continuing to use my resources to protect those buildings.
I have a quick clarifying question, please. The president said yesterday that you're saying that you're not expanding this at all. Because the president said very clearly that this was going to expand.
I think well, let's make sure that we're talking about 2 very different things here. We're talking about Portland, which is unique, about violent anarchists in Portland versus normal city criminal activity and behavior by gangs, by criminal elements throughout the country. Those are 2 different things. The president, you can certainly ask the White House and others, that's what he was referring to. So what we have in Portland is very different than we see in any other city.
Yes, I was just going to ask, thank you for having this. You said these are well organized and there's large numbers of people night after night. Do you have information about who is supporting this criminal activity? Can you name it?
Again, I would defer you to the Department of Justice. FBI is on ground. They are investigating just that question. So they're going to have the best information for you on that. Yep.
You said you spoke to the governor and the mayor at one point and asked them what they needed from you. Have you or any other federal official spoken to the mayor or the governor since that opening conversation, or has it just been all over Twitter?
So I talked to the mayor and the governor, gave them my number, told them to certainly reach out to me if they needed anything from the federal government, again, to bring this to a close. My phone is operating and working. I'm happy to talk with them anytime they want to talk.
That hasn't happened since that first conversation.
Again, the conversation that we had was very definitive on what actions they would like DHS to take. Those actions were not helpful. It wasn't a productive dialogue on their side. I came with options for them and was really listening on what it is that they needed. It wasn't productive, but I'm happy to talk to them at any point. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Could you perhaps let us know how much this operation in Portland has cost the taxpayer? And could you also confirm between the different agencies how many officers have been sent there? We're seeing reports of about 60. Is that accurate?
So I don't have the cost on what this is costing the federal government. I'm sure we could probably figure that out. We have a number of agents. I'm not going to give out an exact number for operational security reasons, but we have a force now that can protect our federal property. You heard the deputy director talk about not only the Hatfield Courthouse, the Edith Green, but we have other properties there as well. So we need to make sure that we're able to protect all of them.
Could you just clarify? The officers that are in Portland are acting under the executive order, the June 26th executive order on, and what the president was talking about when he was talking about other cities, is that something different? Can you just sort of tell us just sort of clarify, what are we talking about?
Again, sorry, I thought we were clear. So the individuals that are in Portland are acting under FPS authority, Department of Homeland Security authority. Doesn't have anything to do with an executive order. This is existing authority that has been on the books for decades. That is the authority they're using to go in and to protect a federal facility. FPS protects almost 9,000 facilities around the country. There's no other facility that has this type of violent activity night after night after night. So that's the authority they're using. And again, Portland is different than any other city that we're talking about that has normal, generalized criminal activity and crime, what we call street crime, whether it's drugs, guns, or the like. Two totally different scenarios that are going on.
All right, that is Acting Homeland Security Director Chad Wolf talking about the situation in our nation's streets, those streets that are particularly out of control in Portland and Seattle and Chicago and elsewhere, where federal agents are being sent in order to quell some of that violence. Joining me now is a Republican Senator from Louisiana, John Kennedy, on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, great to see you. Thank you for coming in. What do you think about the use of federal agents in these cities if the people elected to those cities' positions, mayors and governors, don't want them?
I don't understand Mayor Wheeler. I just don't.
This is the mayor of Portland. Go ahead.
Yes. You know, my first thought is, when I saw all this, is, you know, when the mayor's IQ gets to 75, he ought to sell. I mean, here you have nihilists trying to burn down his city, destroying people's businesses, law-abiding people's businesses. The federal government is trying to help, and he is criticizing the federal government. You know, who's on first? What's on second? This makes no sense to me.
Well, he's running, maybe I just throw something out there, but he's running against an opponent in November for his position who said very vocally, "I am Antifa." I'm quoting her right now, the person he's running against for the mayor. That may have something to do with it. He's running against somebody who's actively in favor of Antifa.
I don't care if he's running against the Pope. This is wrong. He took an oath to protect his people and to protect the city. How is allowing a bunch of nihilists who don't even know the difference between Ulysses S. Grant and George Washington, how allowing them to burn down his city, how is that in the best interest of the people of Portland? I just don't get it.
You know, I want to switch to another issue involving what's happening on our streets, and that's that couple who were protecting their home with weapons. The man had a long gun, the woman had a handgun. Their territory had been invaded. It was a private property by people who they say were threatening their lives, and now they have been indicted for felony charges. What do you make of that?
I've said this before, and this is kind of how I view the issue. I believe love is the answer, but I also own a handgun just in case. And if somebody tries to threaten me or threaten my family, I have the right, as an American, to defend myself.
Well, does the prosecutor have the right to indict for felony?
No, of course
if these
not.
individuals do that?
No. We all saw what happened on TV. And the Attorney General and the Governor need to overrule the Attorney General. And by the way, when his IQ gets to 75, he ought to sell too.
All right, let me switch to yet another subject. We've got him popping today. We have Nancy Pelosi just announcing that $1 trillion is not enough money for another coronavirus relief bill. What do you make of that?
Look, CDC tells us, David, that out of every 1,000 Americans who get the coronavirus, 6 are going to die. So the coronavirus can kill you. Poverty can too. We're trying to do something about it. Our economy has been waterboarded. We've spent $3 trillion, 6 if you include the Federal Reserve. We're working on another $1 trillion bill. There's some good ideas being debated. The only thing I'm certain right now is, and the Speaker just needs to accept this, Speaker Pelosi's bill is not going to pass. You can write that down and take it home to Mama. And the sooner she accepts that fact, the sooner we'll be able to confect a deal that's in the best interest of the American people.
Well, let me just ask you what is acceptable and what is not. Extending the $600 weekly bonus that the feds throw into unemployment insurance for all those who've been thrown out of work, that will expire at the end of July, and she wants to extend it another 6 months, which will cost, I've added it up, about $360 billion. Is that acceptable or not?
Here's what we're talking about doing, David. We're talking about, and nothing's been decided yet, direct stimulus payments. We're talking about a payroll tax cut. We're going to probably do something on unemployment compensation. It won't be an extra $600 a week, but we need to address that. We're going to try to help the elementary and secondary schools that decide to open. There's some discussion on helping higher education. I want to understand why we need to help them, because we gave them a lot of money in the first round. I'm not closing my mind to it, but I need some answers. Dan Sullivan and I have a bill to give state and local governments more flexibility to spend the money we've already given them. That's probably going to be part of the bill.
But you did say, you did throw in there, just to be specific, you threw in there that an extension of that unemployment bill or the unemployment check would be acceptable. You said by maybe not $600.
Not at $600 a week. No.
So what would be acceptable?
Well, we're talking about that. It'll probably be tied to a percentage of a person's former income. We're going to have some people out of work. I know a lot of folks had to go on unemployment, and I think I thought that many of them, when it ended, they'd be able to go back to a job. I'm afraid, particularly in the hospitality industry, they're not going to have a job to go back to, and we're going to try to help them. But we can't pay people more not to work than to work.
Senator John Kennedy, always a pleasure to have you in, sir. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, moments away from a White House news conference, Brett Baer on the message that we should be hearing from the president. Brett will be with us next.
As a real estate agent, I've learned it's excess moisture that causes musty odors. Pro tip, use Damp Rid.
Damp Rid drop-in tabs attract and trap excess moisture out of the air, eliminating musty odors.
Works every time.
Get rid of dampness. Damp Rid.
It's Velveeta shells and cheese versus the other guys. Clearly, Velveeta melts creamier.
You have reached the 911 police emergency line. Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call. If you're calling to report a rape, please press 1. To report a murder, press 2. To report a home invasion, press 3. For all other crimes, leave your name and number, and someone will get back to you. Our estimated wait time is currently 5 days. Goodbye.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
With our consumer cellular plan, I can stream Frankie for an hour a day if I want. While you're taking a nap, who's a good boy?
Frankie off the couch.
No, it's okay. Just stay there.
Get talk, text, and data as low as $20 a month. See how much you can save at consumercellular.com.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
I wish I could shake your hand.
Granted. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Unrest in America out of control, so how far will the madness go? We need to restore law and order. Kevin McCarthy will join us with insight tonight on Hannity.
Guys come in all shapes and sizes. There is no normal for everyone, but there is a normal for you. If, like thousands of other guys, you find that your normal isn't so normal anymore, it could be an addressable medical condition called Peyronie's disease, or PD. A curve with a bump that bothers you isn't normal and should be checked out by a urologist, because you don't have to accept this as your new normal. Find a urologist at learnaboutpd.com. Buckle up.
This is it. Complete annihilation.
People like us must destroy people like him.
A guy like me, a father of 5, 6.
Mamma mia, what a fight!
You do what has to be done.
Make a move.
Mortgage fraud, the fastest growing white-collar cybercrime in America. And the next victim could be you.
Homeowners need to realize that they have power with Home Title Lock.
The thing with Home Title Lock is as soon as there was activity, they would notify me immediately.
Use promo code LOCK10 to get 10% off. Go to HomeTitleLock.com for your free home title scan to see if you have already been hacked. That's a $100 value at HomeTitleLock.com.
These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com. Print discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime, right from your computer. All the amazing services of the post office, only cheaper. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/try and never go to the post office again.
Well, we know the coronavirus has been hitting us all hard, particularly airlines. Now we're getting the first look at just how hard those airlines have been hit. United releasing its second quarter earnings. Christina Partsinevelos has those details. Hi, Christina.
Hey, David, you're seeing a massive drop in travel demand, and that is causing a multi-billion-dollar loss for a lot of airlines, including United Airlines. They just released their earnings report, and they reported a loss of $1.6 billion for the second quarter. If you're wondering on a per-day basis, the company burned $40 million each day. However, the earnings report, you had earnings per share come in a little bit lower than expected. Revenue was stronger at $1.4 billion, so that was a little bit stronger. Mixed bag overall. The company too is focusing on capacity. A lot of investors focus on how full are the planes, and they said right now they're operating at half capacity, social distancing in place. We take a look at the stock just over the last 6 months, plunged dramatically like many other airlines, but today was climbing higher. Why is that? Because investors like the fact the company said they'll be burning less cash. So instead of $40 million, it'll be $25 million. And unfortunately, David, they're still selling that middle seat. Back to you.
It's been a while since I've been on a plane. Good to see you, Christina. Thank you very much. Well, we are moments away from President Trump holding a news conference on coronavirus. So how important are these briefings for the president? With me now, anchor of Special Report at 6 p.m., whose time may be cut into a little bit by these press conferences coming back. Now, Brett, these briefings very often got highly contentious. I don't think one went by without some fight between the president and somebody in the press corps, usually about something that had nothing to do with coronavirus. Does the president think that's going to help him leading into the election?
Well, David, good afternoon. I think, first of all, it's optimistic to say it's going to start right at 5. Tradition has it that these things get pushed back quite a bit, and sometimes, as you mentioned, go into the special report hour at 6. Yeah. I think that these are going to be shorter. From everything that we're hearing from the White House so far, Kayleigh McEnany coming out earlier today saying that these will likely be a little bit more condensed. This is the president. He is going to answer questions. However, he is going to deliver the good news, according to the White House, about vaccine progress and therapeutics and where they are on specific numbers. We know that Anthony Fauci is at NIH right now, doesn't have any plans to be there at the White House in a few minutes. Vice President Pence is in Charleston, South Carolina, so he's not going to be there. We don't know exactly who else is potentially going to be there, but the president will, and he will answer questions.
Well, let's talk about the presidential race, because the coronavirus has become political. It pretty much, you knew it was going to go in that direction when it became an economic factor. And now Vice President Biden has essentially been painting the president as having blood on his hands for this thing getting as bad as it's been in the United States. I think that, more than anything, might be motivating a return of these coronavirus meetings, no?
No, I agree with you, 100%. You heard the former Vice President Biden saying today that the president has quit. He is done. He's quit America, essentially, is the quote that he said earlier today. I think the president and his team look at the polls, including our Fox poll, that shows that coronavirus is the #1 concern for voters as they head into this election cycle, at least right now. Who knows where this is going to go, David, but it beats the economy 2-1 in our latest poll as far as people's concerns.
Well, because it beats the economy. That's the problem with the coronavirus. In addition to the personal tragedies happening in every household, you have the economic consequences. But you also have another story occurring at the same time, which is bound to pop its head up during this press conference. That's the question of law and order, and how the president is dealing with it, particularly the use of federal agents to go into areas that have said that they don't want them, like in Portland, like in Seattle, and possibly in Chicago as well. What do you make of all that?
Well, I think this is a big part of the president's re-election pitch, and that is law and order, keeping the peace, fighting even if some of the leaders in those cities, in his words, are not going to fight to keep it peaceful. Now, it is controversial, and he has received a lot of criticism for some of the people he's put into these different places. But if you're a business in downtown Portland that is dealing with the violence that leads, protests that lead to rioting or looting, it becomes an issue. And he's not going after Portland voters. I think he's going after a law and order pitch overall. Right. And we'll see how it sells.
My buddy over at the Wall Street Journal, Bill McGurn, had a column saying it's the old "if you broke it, you bought it" thing, where if the president just allowed the situations to follow whatever disastrous course they follow, maybe the voters will wake up and vote out the people that have the policies that are helping create this crisis. It doesn't seem like that message coming from a conservative voice is resonating inside the White House right now.
No, and the president sees opportunity here. I think this move with these coronavirus briefings, though, tell you something different. Is that as much as he can talk about law and order, as much as he can talk about not bringing down different monuments around the country and keeping the streets safe, it's coronavirus that he needs to be touting about what his administration is specifically doing and what successes they see. Obviously, there's a lot of questions about where the U.S. is in the big picture of being able to fight the coronavirus, and where we will be come November will really determine the fate of this president.
Well, I hope that it starts as soon as possible so you don't have to take your script and rip it. That must kill you when you have to rip up your script. Oh, boy. Well,
I have a good staff, as you know.
And you're a good sport because you dealt with it for many, many weeks, and we will see what happens. Bret Baier, 6 p.m., special report. Let's say count on it, folks. Don't change your DVR.
Some part of it.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be there. And, tune in anyway because the president's going to make it all interesting. Bret Baier, great to see you, my friend. Thank you very much. Well, as you can see, they are setting up for the coronavirus task force. The president will be there. Question is, will he have a mask? The White House briefing imminent. Here's the 5.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Waters, along with Juan Williams, Greg Gutfeld, Dagan McDowell, and Emily Campagno. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is the 5. Fox News alert, you're looking live at the White House podium, where any minute now President Trump will be holding his first coronavirus briefing since April. It could be a boost to his re-election campaign as cases of the virus continue to spike in the U.S. The president is expected to focus on vaccines and therapeutics and is planning on taking questions from the press. Democrats not happy with the return of the briefings. They're furious that the president is talking directly to the American people.
Donald Trump demonstrates every single day, not just that he's incompetent, it's also that he is dangerous. And people are dying because of this pandemic.
Do you hear that, Donald Trump? You have created one of the greatest failures of presidential leadership in our country's entire history. When the White House coronavirus briefings resume, President Trump should not take the podium. Every time President Trump takes the podium at one of these briefings, he's a threat to public health.
Okay. Emily, I'm always under the assumption that if Chuck Schumer says the president shouldn't do something, he should do it.
I'm of that same ilk. I will say that I'm a full supporter of the return of these briefings, and I think it's a great way for the president to win back those voters that he might have lost, who have potentially lost confidence in his handling of the pandemic, and also to turn around that narrative being pushed by Chuck Schumer and those on the left that his handling has been a failure. But for this to work, he, in my opinion, needs to do three things. He needs to be realistic. He needs to not oversell vaccine or any timelines. He also needs to be prudent and talk about the importance of social distancing and mask wearing. And he also needs to highlight the successes, right? Like, for example, sports are slowly returning because they are taking it seriously. And I think the more that he sort of sticks to those data points, the more he comes full forth as a leader, the more that this will bode well for him and also potential voters.
I think those are three great things. And I would go to Juan Williams on one more thing. I think there was one or two moments in the briefings a few months ago where one of the news reporters asked just a horrific question, just a total setup, you know, how much blood are you willing to spill, Mr. President? You know, that kind of thing. And he handled it really well. He kind of rose above the animosity of the question, didn't take the bait, and spoke kind of above her to the American people about how he cared and how compassionate he was. I think if he can do that again in a less confrontational way, the American people will continue to tune in and get their information from these briefings. Juan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice. I like Emily's advice. I like your advice, Jesse. I mean, to me, the key here is that coronavirus is the #1 point of concern for Americans today. I don't think there's any question about it. It's a bigger issue than the economy. And voters clearly don't think that the president is doing a good job. Not with 138,000 people dead, not with the economy still struggling with this virus. So, you know, what's interesting is the politics, because their opinion of the president's handling of the virus is very closely aligned with their choice for president in the presidential race. And right now, Joe Biden is up, I think it's +17 in the Fox poll. 60% of Americans in the Washington Post poll say they disapprove of the way President Trump has been dealing with the virus. Now, until recently, the White House said he was too busy to attend the coronavirus task force meetings. I guess that's changing, and that's why I think your advice, Emily's advice, is good. If he can come in with data, real information, as opposed to making this a new source of rallies or a substitute for the convention, or just for, you know, berating reporters, I think that'd be great for the American people.
Dagan, you know what strikes me about that poll number about approval on the virus handling is if Joe Biden were president, we probably would have had 3 times as many dead because he was against the ban from China. So I don't really understand that poll result. Do you?
No, and I'd like to see the likes of, say, Governor Cuomo or the 5 governors that sent COVID-positive patients back into nursing homes in this country. 45 governors didn't. I'd like to see how they poll with Governor Cuomo and his vomitous portrait of denial that he had a hand in literally killing thousands of elderly people just in New York State. But I am irritated and bothered by the kind of gleeful posture of some of these Democrats. And have they no shame? Because they are willingly standing atop the suffering and hardship of the American people for a higher political profile and more love from the chattering classes. We need, as a nation, to admit that people in government
They have no idea what they're doing. Every American is going to have to take responsibility for protecting themselves and their families and even their elderly loved ones, because certainly these Democrats didn't do it in places like New York. And I know President Trump, one thing he's going to do is go through the long list of private companies that are creating vaccines and what the timeline looks like. And if you start with AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson, they are on it, and hopefully we'll have something by early next year.
Yeah, Greg, it seems the Democrats think everything is, I would have done everything Donald Trump did, except I would have done it earlier, better, and faster. It's pretty easy to say.
Yeah, I mean, I said it yesterday. I'm still waiting for what alternative suggestions they have that counters Trump. All they do is they look at what he does and say, oh, I could have done it better. But none of them offered any real, I don't know, suggestions early on. You know, we shoveled a bunch of Democratic narratives in the front of this show, and we have to hit that with the data and the real info, as Juan mentions. Let us not forget that it's New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and Massachusetts that have the worst death rates. These are Democratic-led states. Right now, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, they're 1/3 of the death rates, 6% of the population. These are Democratic-run, Democrat-led. Through yesterday, 2.5 times more death are occurring in Democratic states than in Republican states. So when you have this narrative pushed by the media, and then they poll the narrative, right? They push this narrative that Republicans, and by connection Trump, are responsible for badness, and then they poll it and they go, ooh, surprise, people are dissatisfied with it. It's because you are running this false narrative. The fact is, Trump accomplished, and America accomplished, 3 things. We set out to flatten the curve, and we did. Then when we flattened the curve, which helped the hospitals, we decided we'd get back to work in phases. No one disagreed with any of this. And so we went back to work in phases, and we knew if there was going to be a problem, that we would make adjustments while trying to find treatments, which we've been doing. Remember, it was the media that blasted the treatments like hydroxychloroquine and actually took pleasure in flawed studies that said it didn't work. So the one thing we learned about COVID is that the only entity that made it worse is the media. And what Trump is trying to do is speak directly to the American people. And right now, he is more important than the experts who have been proven wrong on so many things, from masks to social distancing to the shutdown. So remember, there are people saying, do not change your life. As far back as February and March, do not change your life. Live your life the same. It wasn't, and then all of a sudden Trump listened and absorbed the information and then made the right decisions. Americans fell in line. They made great sacrifices. Now we're trying to get our economy back together. And by the way, it is bouncing back, but it's not going to be easy. We know that. We understand that. We're adults. We can balance risk with benefit and risk with progress. We don't need to be lectured every day about how many people are dying when you aren't telling us the death rates, right? When you just sit there and tell us how many more cases there are, but you don't talk about whether the death rates are declining. We know what they're up to. We know what their narrative is, and it's all baloney.
Yeah, Emily, to Greg's point, I wonder if the way the media has leveled these expectations against the president, if he had been a Democrat, maybe this would have been perceived as a humongous success, that he had prevented the spread of more virus coming in from China with the travel ban, and then had taken early action to shut down the greatest economy in the world, and then opened it back up based on the science, and is now encouraging your sons and daughters to get back safely into school. This could have been totally covered differently if, Barack Obama or Joe Biden had been commander-in-chief. I wonder if a lot of the perceptions have been so polluted by the 100% negative coverage of everything the administration did, that's got to have been infecting a lot of the people's minds about how safe or successful they feel.
Oh, undoubtedly, Jesse. 100%. That's exactly what has happened. And I have to say, too, that that's part of what's dangerous, because given that this is a public health crisis, people don't believe what they don't want to believe. So as you say, if they're inundated with this preperception, or they're carved into who they believe that they should follow, well then nothing will change their mind. No amount of data, no amount of facts. And that's the saddest part. However, with the president resuming these briefings and sticking to data and everything that Greg just outlined, if he says that every day, day after day, first of all, the narrative and the messaging is back in his court. And secondly, it rebuts everything day after day.
And it looks like the president is taking the podium right now.
Today I want to provide an update on our response to the China virus and what my administration is doing to get the outbreak in the Sun Belt under control. Seems largely in Sun Belt, but could be spreading. My team is also working night and day with Capitol Hill to advance the next economic relief package. We're working very hard on it. We're making a lot of progress. I also know that both sides want to get it done. We'll call it phase 4. I think we're going to get it done. We'll protect our workers, our schools, and our families, and protect them very strongly. As one family, we mourn every precious life that's been lost. I pledge in their honor that we will develop a vaccine and we will defeat the virus. We're doing very well with vaccine development and therapeutic development. But I want to thank our brave doctors and nurses and frontline responders. The job they do is incredible, and they are truly brave. My administration will stop at nothing to save lives and shield the vulnerable, which is so important. We've learned so much about this disease, and we know who the vulnerable are, and we are going to indeed shield them. And again, the vaccines are coming, and they're coming a lot sooner than anyone thought possible, by years. If you look at the old system and look at the new system, I think by years. The China virus is a vicious and dangerous illness, but we've learned a great deal about it and who it targets. We are in the process of developing a strategy that's going to be very, very powerful. We've developed them as we go along. Some areas of our country are doing very well, others are doing less well. It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is. It's what we have. You look over the world, it's all over the world, and it tends to do that. The governors are working very, very hard, and we are supporting them 100%. Everything they need, they get, and we are taking good care. We have tremendous supplies and a great supply chain, whether it's ventilators or gowns or just about anything they need. So that's a big difference from inheriting very, very empty cupboards. The median age of those who succumb to the China virus is 78 years old. Roughly half of all deaths have been individuals in nursing homes or long-term care. In one study, 90% of those hospitalized had underlying medical conditions, whether it's heart or diabetes, but usually it's some kind of a condition. It seems that people have that, and if they do, it's a problem, no question about it. Young adults may often have mild or even no symptoms. They won't even know they're sick. They won't have any idea that they have a virus. They won't have any idea at all. America's youth will act responsibly, and we're asking everybody that when you are not able to socially distance, wear a mask, get a mask. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact, they'll have an effect, and we need everything we can get. Data shows children have the lowest fatality risk. 99.96% of all virus fatalities are in adults. Think of that. So that's much, much, much less than 1% for children, young people. By understanding these risk profiles and learning how to treat the disease, we've been able to greatly reduce mortality in the United States. In fact, we'll show you a chart and how well we do compared to the rest of the world. We have several treatments already available that significantly reduce the severity and duration of the disease, including remdesivir, which has been very successful, and a widely available steroid treatment. And we have many more happening and coming out. We've learned best practices for treatment of the virus at every stage and have shared these findings with medical providers, and we've shared them all over the world. The relationship with other countries has been very strong. We're all working together. This includes ensuring all hospitals are aware of the importance of different approaches to oxygen treatment, including high flow oxygen, the importance of steroid treatment for those on ventilators. And when you're on a ventilator, we've learned a tremendous about the use of the ventilator. And at the beginning, people never had an experience like this, where we needed so many ventilators so fast, and even the use of the ventilators. But the doctors have become incredibly, and nurses and helpers have become incredibly good at the use of a ventilator, which is actually a very complicated procedure, and allocating remdesivir to hospitals based on new admissions, since it works best early in hospitalization. And that's something that they've really started. They're using it much earlier. Fatalities nationwide have fallen 75% since mid-April. It's a great number. As cases and fatalities rise in certain hard-hit states, which you're looking at right now, we're surging personnel, supplies, and therapeutics. We again have tremendous amounts of supplies. We are in very good shape, and we can move them quickly. Our case fatality rate has continued to decline and is lower than the European Union and almost everywhere else in the world. If you watch American television, you'd think that the United States was the only country involved with and suffering from the China virus. Well, the world is suffering very badly. But the fact is that many countries are suffering very, very, very badly. And they've been suffering from this virus for a long time. We've done much better than most, and with the fatality rate at a lower rate than most, it's something that we can talk about, but we're working again with them because we're helping a lot of countries that people don't even know about. I get calls all the time asking for help, especially as it pertains to the ventilators. They need help with ventilators. They have to get them. They're very hard to get. We're making thousands now a month, thousands of ventilators a month. It's been quite amazing. We keep doing a good job, and things will get better and better. We'll be putting up charts behind me showing different statistics and different rates of success, and I guess you could say also things that we can do better on. But you'll see them. They'll be put up as we go. In April, the average age of individuals who tested positive for the virus was over 50 years old. Today, the average age is significantly younger. Hospital lengths of stay are almost half of what they were in April. So the stays are about half. The rate of cases requiring hospitalization has been reduced, and mortality among those admitted to the hospital is nearly 1/2 of what it was in April. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about this disease, how to handle it. The doctors have learned a lot, not only in the use of the ventilators, but in many other things. And things are happening too, like the remdesivir and other elements, steroids, etc. But these trends could change without our continued and relentless focus. And that's what we have. We have a relentless focus, and it's been that way from the beginning. But we've learned so much. As you know, in recent weeks, we've seen a concerning rise in the cases in many parts of our south. You look at south, southwest, and west. This growth in cases first began to appear in mid-June, primarily among 18 to 35-year-olds, many of whom were asymptomatic. We're also facing the challenge of a significant spike in virus cases across the rest of the Western Hemisphere, including Mexico. Mexico's been hit very, very, very hard. As you know, the president, a great gentleman, was here 2 weeks ago, and they have really been hit hard. Because we've achieved a nearly fourfold increase in testing capacity in 2 months, we're successfully identifying more asymptomatic and mild cases. Some cases so mild that you really don't even treat them. Some cases with children where they don't even know that they're ill. And I guess they're not very ill because they recover almost immediately. Per capita, the U.S. is conducting 50% more tests than Europe. And we've conducted nearly 3 times as many tests as all of the other countries in the Western Hemisphere combined. Be over 50 million tests. This allows us to isolate those who are infected, even those without symptoms, so we know exactly where it's going and when it's going to be there. We're also working to reduce turnaround time. My administration has been aggressively responding to case growth in the Sun Belt, and we continue to do so, working very close with all governors, but right now, in particular, those governors. We're coordinating closely with hospitals and governors. In the last 3 weeks, I've sent senior officials into 9 states to meet with governors and provide recommendations to the various leaders of the state, including hospital administrators, etc. My administration currently has 0 unfulfilled requests for equipment or anything else that they need from the governors. No governor needs anything right now, and we think we'll have it that way till the end, because frankly, we are stocked up and ready to go wherever we have to go. We've nearly 7,000 National Guard and military medical personnel in Texas, California, Florida, and Arizona that's helping us greatly. I want to thank them very much. The military has been fantastic. We're closely monitoring hospital capacity in these states. Hospitals are open for elective surgeries and other procedures. So hospitals are open for elective surgeries. We want Americans to get the medical treatments they need. All of the governors we've spoken with say they have enough bed capacity. That's a great thing. Our initial shutdown was to prevent the overflow of our hospitals and to allow us to meet the demands caused by this global pandemic, including the ventilators. And a permanent shutdown was really never an option in terms of what we're doing right now. This would be completely unsustainable, produce debilitating economic fallback, and lead to catastrophic public health consequences. There are consequences to shutdowns, and we've saved potentially millions of lives by doing the initial shutdown, but now we're very aware of this disease. We understand the disease to a large extent. Nobody's going to maybe ever fully understand it, but we'll end up with a cure, we'll end up with therapeutics, we'll end up with a vaccine very soon, all 3. We're instead asking Americans to use masks, socially distance, and employ vigorous hygiene. Wash your hands every chance you get while sheltering high-risk populations. We are imploring young Americans to avoid packed bars and other crowded indoor gatherings. Be safe and be smart. We're surging testing capacity to identify and isolate cases. This includes a newly approved testing platform to nursing homes across the South. We're being very, very vigilant with respect to nursing homes, because you know all of the problems that we've had with so many people, so sadly they were infected, so that all of the staff and residents can be routinely tested and isolated to ensure our elderly are even more strongly protected than anybody else. That's really the high-risk people, the high-risk, wonderful people. Once this current surge in cases declines, the same testing platform will enable people to visit their loved ones after taking a test, which is a big difference. Ultimately, our goal is not merely to manage the pandemic, but to end it. We want to get rid of it as soon as we can. That is why getting a vaccine remains a top priority. 2 vaccine candidates are entering the final stage of clinical trials this month. This was achieved in record time. It used to be years before you were in a position like we are right now. 4 other vaccines will enter final trials in the following weeks, and we're mass producing all of the top candidates so that the first approved vaccine will be available immediately. And logistically, we have the military ready to go. We have great people, logistic military people, a wonderful general who's waiting for the vaccine so they can distribute it in record time. That's what's going to happen. So our military is all set to go. We will deliver a vaccine, therapeutics, whatever it is necessary, and defeat the virus once and for all. And I'll take a few questions if you'd like. I will say this. I want to thank all of the staff, the White House staff, all of the doctors that we've been working with so closely, and just a lot of very positive things are happening. It's a nasty, horrible disease that should have never been allowed to escape China, but it did. And it infected the world, and the world is suffering, but we're going to get it taken care of, and we're helping lots of other countries. John?
Mr. President, first I just wanted to get a clarification. Your press secretary said today that you sometimes take more than one test a day. Well, why is that? And how?
Well, I didn't know about more than one. I do take probably on average a test every 2 days, 3 days, and I don't know of any time I've taken 2 tests in one day, but I could see that happening.
So Republicans and Democrats from Capitol Hill both said that they want to see more money for testing. They want to send billions of dollars to the states so they can do more testing. And you probably saw Mick Mulvaney the other day said that his kids, it took them a week to get test results back. He said this is simply inexcusable given where we are in the pandemic. Do you think we have a problem with testing in this country right now? And are you in favor of more money for testing?
We've done more testing by far than anybody. Some of the tests, because it is massive volume, it takes longer. Others of the tests, as you know, are very quick. They're 5 minutes and 15-minute tests. And those are, frankly, the ones that I prefer. But we're doing massive numbers, and the numbers are coming down. And as we go, as an example, there are thousands and thousands of kits being made right now, which give you a 15-minute and a 5-minute test. So we'll be able to get those numbers down. Those numbers are similar in other places. They're also doing massive numbers like nobody thought possible. But those numbers will be coming down. I agree. I think it's a good thing if we can do it.
Are you in favor of more money for testing?
Well, they're going to make a presentation to me tonight and tomorrow on that. And again, we're leading the world. I think the second country at 12 million, we're going to be over 50 million tests. Second country is India with 12 million. Then you have 7 million, 6 million, and 4 million. I think that we are doing a tremendous amount of testing, but if the doctors and the professionals feel that even though we're at a level that nobody ever dreamt possible, that they would like to do more, I'm okay with it.
Why are your doctors not with you here today? Where's Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx?
Well, Dr. Birx is right outside. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've got 2 questions for you, if that's all right. Number one, I just wanted to know, in November, do you want the American people to judge you on...
Speak up, please.
Do you want the American people to judge you on the ballot in November by how you've handled this pandemic so far?
This, among other things, I think the American people will judge us on this, but they'll judge us on the economy that I created and that already we're creating. We're setting record job numbers, as you know. I think we're going to have a very strong year next year. I think we're going to have a very strong third quarter, a very good fourth quarter, but I think next year is going to be a record year. And I think they're going to judge me on that. I think they're going to judge me on the tax cutting and the regulation cutting, which nobody's ever done to the extent that we've been able to do it, on rebuilding the military, on how we've handled the VA. On the VA, we got Veterans Choice. Nobody thought that would be possible. That's been many decades. They've been trying to get Veterans Choice. It's called Choice, where they can go get a doctor if they have to wait online for 2 weeks or 5 weeks or 2 days. And frankly, that's been a great thing. Veterans accountability, I think they'll judge me on that. They'll judge me on all of the things we've done. I don't think, and I think we can say this, we sure did, and it's never been even challenged in 3.5 years, the first 3.5 years, the first years of a presidency. I don't think any administration, any president has accomplished so much as we've accomplished, from energy to health to so many other things. And then this came in, and the plague, I call it the plague came in, terrible thing, should have been stopped, wasn't stopped. It came in, we had to shut things down to save potentially millions of lives. We did that, and now we've started them up, and I think we've really started it up very successfully.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've been saying for months the virus would simply disappear, and now you're saying that it's likely to get worse before it gets better. If it does keep getting worse, if Americans keep dying, how are you responsible for that?
Well, the virus will disappear. It will disappear. I think that I always like to say, as you know, either way, when you look at it, the governors are working with me. I'm working with the governor. We're working hand in hand. I think we're all responsible. I view it as a team. Very good relationships with the governors. Very, very good relationships. I could say I'm fully responsible, but you know, one day we had a virus come in, and I closed the borders, did a lot of things that were very good. In fact, Dr. Fauci said we saved tens of thousands of lives when I closed the border, and nobody wanted to do it. I wanted to do it. We closed the border to China. We put on the ban. We didn't want people coming in from heavily infected China. Fairly shortly thereafter, I closed the borders from Europe, coming in from Europe. Those were tremendous moves. We would have, if it's one person, it's too much, but we're at, let's say, 140,000. We could have double, triple, quadruple that number if we didn't. So we did a lot of things right. We did a lot of things right, including with equipment. So it's a shame that it happened. It shouldn't have happened. China should have stopped it.
Thank you, President Trump. If I could, two questions. My first question is, we have a very quick testing platform here at the White House.
Yes.
It's great. You get tested, very quickly. Do you think that it would be easier to reopen and restart businesses if we could produce more of those machines?
We're trying to do that. It's a great question. We're trying very much to do that. So rather than sending your tests in and, it goes through the mail one day, comes back another day, no matter how they send them, it's a day and a day, so that's 2 days already wasted. And then if it spends by the time you get it back, it's 3 or 4 days if they do an efficient job. We're trying to get the testing on site.
Thank you.
I like it the best.
And my follow-up, my second question, it's a little bit a different topic, but it's one that a lot of people are talking about. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and so a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people. And I know you've talked in the past about Prince Andrew, and you've criticized Bill Clinton's behavior. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well, whatever it is. I don't know the situation with Prince Andrew. Just don't know. Not aware of it.
On unemployment insurance, how much below $600 are you willing to go? And you said that the economy is bouncing back strong, so why do we need to even cut it at all?
Well, the economy is getting stronger, and I think we have a chance to have a very strong economy, especially if some of the things that I just spoke about work. We want to have people go back and want to go back to work, as opposed to be sort of forced into a position where they're making more money than they expected to make, and the employers are having a hard time getting them back to work. So that was a decision that was made. I was against that original decision, but they did that. It still worked out well because it gave people a lifeline, a real lifeline. Now we're doing it again. They're thinking about doing 70% of the amount. The amount would be the same, but doing it in a little bit smaller initial amounts so that people are going to want to go back to work, as opposed to making so much money that they really don't have to. But we were very generous with them. I think that it's been a tremendously successful program. The whole thing has been successful if you look. I mean, we're in a pandemic, and yet we're producing tremendous number of jobs. That was something that nobody thought possible. Okay, please.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Yesterday you said that wearing a mask was an act of patriotism. If that is the case, why don't you do it more frequently?
Well, I do actually do it when I need. I mean, I carry the mask when I have to go. I went into Walter Reed Hospital the other day. I have the mask right here, and I carry it, and I will use it gladly. No problem with it. And I've said that, and I say, if you can, use the mask. When you can, use the mask. If you're close to each other, if you're in a group, I would put it on when I'm in a group. If I'm in an elevator and there are other people with me, including like security people, it's not their fault. They have to be in the elevator. I want to protect them also. I put on a mask. I have no problem with the masks. I view it this way. Anything that potentially can help, and that certainly can potentially help, is a good thing. I have no problem. I carry it. I wear it. You saw me wearing it a number of times, and I'll continue. Please.
Go ahead, please. Are you sending mixed messages? So yesterday you tweeted out an image wearing a mask, and then last evening we saw you not wearing a mask at your hotel.
Well, I don't know the hotel. I was pretty far away from people, but I would say this. I've explained it, I think, very well. If you're close together, I would put on the mask, and if you're not, I would say that if you're, for instance, I'll see, like here, you've been all tested, I've been tested. Oftentimes I'll be with people that are fully tested, I've been tested. In theory, you don't need the mask. I'm getting used to the mask, and the reason is, think about patriotism. Maybe it is, it helps. It helps. Now, we have experts that have said in the recent past that masks aren't necessarily good to wear. You know that. But now they've changed their mind. If they change their mind, that's good enough for me. So I wear it when appropriate. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. A lot of Americans, though, may be surprised at your change of tone over all of this, a more perhaps realistic tone. Some would look at it that way. The sudden embrace of masks, social distancing,
Well, I've always agreed with that. I mean, I've never fought either one, but certainly social distancing. I want to That's common sense. 6 feet to me is common sense. I'd like to say maybe make it a little bit further.
The idea that things will get worse perhaps before they get better here, and perhaps the realization that this resurgence, if you will, is for real when you used to talk about it in terms of little fires being put out here and there.
We have them too. No, we have embers and fires, and we have big fires, and unfortunately now Florida is in a little tough or in a big tough position. You have a great governor there. You have a great governor in Texas. You have people that are very, very skilled people, and I think they're going to handle it very well. Their hospital capacities are holding up, but Texas is a big state, and it's very well run, and so is Florida. And I think they'll do a very good job.
Changing your tone, though, sir?
I just wanted to ask you about the issue of vaccines, which you already mentioned. Yesterday, a study by a Chinese company showed some promising results for its coronavirus vaccine candidate. If China were first in developing the vaccine, or even if it weren't, would the administration be willing to work with China to bring a successful Chinese vaccine to the U.S.?
Yeah, we're willing to work with anybody that's going to get us a good result. We're very close to the vaccine. I think we're going to have some very good results. We're already in testing. Nobody thought that would be possible. Under the old system, it would be a year to 2 years before you could even think about using the word testing. So I think we've had a lot of, and the reason we're testing, I mean, they've had good results. So now we have to see in the testing also for safety, because they have to make sure it's safe. And I think you're going to see something over the next fairly short period of time, maybe very short period of time, having to do with therapeutics and vaccines that are very good. So we'll be doing these quite often. We're going to keep you abreast of this, and we'll also talk about some of the other topics like our economy, which is doing well. The stock market had another good day. I think they have a good day because they see a lot of positive things happening on this front too. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
That was the president right there briefing the American people from the White House podium on the coronavirus, saying that things are going to get worse before they get better, striking a much more serious and measured tone about the virus, talking about some of the successes that the administration has had, 50 million tests done, the mortality rate in hospital stays being slashed in half since April, National Guard medical personnel surging into the Southwest because it does look like the Sun Belt may be looking at becoming a hot spot. And the president saying we've learned a lot in the last few months about this virus and are much more and better prepared to take on whether it's a second wave or an emergence in certain different areas of the country. The governors have everything they need, the president said, and warned people to avoid packed bars and said wear masks, but said there will be no more shutdowns. And we are in advanced stages of vaccine testing. Let's take it around the table. Greg Gutfeld, what did you think about the president? Spoke for, I think it was just maybe 20 to 25 minutes there.
I thought he reined in the impromptu and improvisational elements of his delivery. So what you got was a very straight summary, which then it becomes shorter because there's not a lot of the side commentary. So I really don't know what CNN's excuse is for not showing it. Because when you have someone go out there and is delivering news to an American nation that needs it, it seems like, I mean, imagine if you were watching CNN right now. Of course you can't. But imagine if you did, you wouldn't know this happened.
Yeah, it looks like they dialed it in when the questions were asked, but they didn't take the top where he delivered all of the factual information to the American people.
There you go.
Dagan, what did you think about the president's presentation on substance and style?
Well, he's owning it and he's leading. He was up there by himself with no one else speaking about what he, the White House, and the nation are doing to fight this virus. So he is taking ownership of the future and the road ahead. And he was asked about the economy. I will point out that because of the shutdowns, the country lost more than 22 million jobs in a matter of months. It's regained 7.5 million of those. That's about 34% of the jobs have returned. And what are they going to be doing in the months ahead? Well, there's another at least $1 trillion aid package. That's $600 extra per week per week, extra per week that people have been getting in unemployment benefits, that has been a lifeline for many individuals, and he talked about extending that. It might be at a lower rate, at a lower amount, maybe sunset in the coming weeks, but that's not something, despite pushback from some conservatives, that's not something that is going away, and that's going to give the economy a lift as we fight through this virus.
Yes, Juan, the president clearly right at the top, framing it as a Chinese virus, and then multiple times during the presentation talking about how this emerged from China, how China failed to stop it and let people from Wuhan fly all over the world. Definitely a different position than the president had taken earlier during the pandemic.
I think he's always been anxious to blame China. He didn't initially, when I think that was partly because he was involved in trying to get that trade deal done, Jesse, but subsequent to that, he has been quick to blame China, to blame Fauci, to blame Obama. I don't know who he hasn't blamed, but I think that what stands out to me here is the change in tone that we've all discussed so far. What strikes me on that point is that this is a president who was very slow to come around on the seriousness of the pandemic, and very slow, therefore, to engage things like the mask. And still, his administration is talking about cutting funding for testing, cutting funding for tracing. That's very concerning. And also, I would point out, he says, 99% of these cases are in adults, as if, oh, just reopen the schools, when in fact, if the kids go home to mom, dad, to grandparents, to neighbors, they could spread the disease to people who are, in fact, quite vulnerable. But what strikes me is the question of his credibility speaking to the American people. Before he went on, you, Jesse, Emily, everybody said, we hope he's more substantive and more direct in terms of delivering data. And I think it's at least a mix, that he's defensive and he's lowered the bar of kind of sprinkling magic dust. It's going to disappear magically. We're going to open everything by Easter. Clearly that's gone. But he's still a very defensive man on this issue.
Well, I didn't see him as defensive. I thought he was pretty honest and forthright. Emily, what was your interpretation of today?
That's exactly right, Jesse. I thought it was excellent. It was clear, competent, data-driven, and Juan pointed out it seemed to be a shift, but I will just note that one of the final reporters at the end, that was sort of his question. He said, Mr. President, we seem to have sort of a shift in your approach here, and I just thought that was excellent. But to your question to me, Jesse, your second one at the top of the hour, when it doesn't matter, that it's all about shaping. Because remember what the first question was from a reporter out of the gate was, so Mr. President, we hear that you're getting multiple tests a day. There was no question on all of the facts and figures that the president presented in the beginning of the hour that was positive. And the biggest debate of all, the biggest line of questioning was the mask debate. Why don't you wear one and whatever? No matter what you put in front of these people, there's always going to be a different shiny object that they're following. And respectfully, Juan, to your point, that it's never going to be enough. If he sat there running out with his hair on fire, oh my gosh, this is the worst and most horrible thing, that still wouldn't be enough, even if the economy collapsed. But I thought right now it was excellent.
I think that was a good point. And every single question was framed as the president and the election and how it plays politically, not on the substance of the war on the coronavirus. More on the 5 up next.
Oh, we're gonna rock on to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher. Oh, we're gonna rock on to.
When it comes to buying a home, they say cash is king. But you're a queen, and that's just as powerful. You're armed with a verified approval from Rocket Mortgage. Sellers know your offer is good, so your bid has the strength to compete with cash offers. Now grab your crown and rule. That castle is yours. So when you need an edge in the bidding war, Rocket can.
Don't just think about where you're headed this summer. Think about how you get there. And now that you can lease or buy a new Lincoln remotely or in person, discovering that feeling has never been more effortless.
Accept our summer invitation to get 0% APR on all 2020 Lincoln vehicles. Only at your Lincoln dealer.
As CEO of Wounded Warrior Project, I hear from wounded veterans every day. But I want you to know how your gifts are changing lives. Many of the same veterans who sacrificed so much for us are now facing financial crisis due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have provided grants to more than 11,000 warriors to help them meet critical needs. Please give to those who gave so much for us. Please go to woundedwarriorproject.org today.
Tonight, as COVID cases surge, the president and his task force hold a public briefing detailing the latest in the fight against coronavirus. Brad is covering every angle on Special Report.
I need to... How you move matters. Avera Orthopedics helps you move freely and live life to the fullest with innovative treatment options customized to your bone, muscle, and joint needs. Whether you suffer from aches, breaks, tears, or dislocations, turn to the orthopedic team experienced in treating every body.
My money should work as hard as I do. That's why I use my Freedom Unlimited card every time I get gas. Give me a little slack. With Freedom Unlimited, you're always earning. I said I need some slack on pump 3.
Time now for one more thing. Some of you noticed, but I've developed a new style here on the 5. No tie. Got a little pushback from some people. There it is. So what we're going to do, we're going to have the audience decide. Leave the tie or put the tie back on. Go to the Instagram page and vote. Should Jesse go back to wearing a tie? My mom says yes, but some of you disagree. We will see and read the results. Next, one more thing. Greg, you're up next.
I would like to see you in a bolo tie and nothing else. All right, so let's do this. Yes. Dogs on skateboard news. That's well done. All right, sometimes when you're skateboarding and you're a dog, you need another dog to help you out. Check out this pair. Getting ready to go. It's a pretty slow commute, but then he gets a little help from his friend. Isn't that sweet? I told you this was cute. Dogs on skateboard news. All right, that's enough for me.
Juan, you're up.
Cute.
All right, so you know it's a small, small world, as they say at Disney's exhibit on different people around the globe. Now a third grader in California has raised money to bring more color into her small world. Take a look at Madison Wilson of Solvang, California. The 7-year-old, one of 3 black children in her school, raised $37,000 to buy crayons in the color of different skin tones. Crayola has a new line of crayons perfect for her called Colors of the World, 24 new colors representing 40 skin tones around the world. She's going to buy not only crayons, but books, multicultural books, for several schools. I think they should have a color called Sparkling Big Star, because that's Madison.
All right, a lot of Crayola. Dagan McDowell.
Keep the tie or lose it, but don't wear flip-flops. Men shouldn't wear flip-flops.
Sorry.
Ever.
I apologize.
Here's a dog eating a burrito with his human. There you go.
Oh.
It's not good boy Carl, Cat Temp's dog. Her dog, Carl, eats with chopsticks.
Nice chalupa.
Oh my God, that is so cute.
All right, everybody.
He's like a squirrel.
See ya.
Thanks, Jesse. Good evening, welcome to Washington. I'm Brett Baer. Breaking tonight, it will likely get worse before it gets better. That from President Trump a short time ago in a solo coronavirus press briefing. The president saying wearing a mask is patriotic and he will push harder for people to wear them in close quarters. It's President Trump's coronavirus briefing, his first in 85 days. The president says a vaccine and effective therapeutics will be coming sooner than anyone thought possible. Meantime, on the statistics, Florida has overtaken Texas in average daily deaths from the coronavirus. Florida averaged 115 deaths per day last week, topping Texas's figure of 112. Total U.S. deaths are now approaching 150,000. That is the most reported globally, with total infections closing in on the 4 million mark. The CDC says true COVID infection rates were more than 10 times higher than reported cases in most U.S. regions from late March to early May. This occurs as talks between the White House and Congress over the next round of coronavirus aid funding hit a bit of a stumbling block. The administration trying to push that through. The Justice Department, meantime, is accusing 2 Chinese hackers of stealing hundreds of millions of dollars of trade secrets from companies around the world, including those working on a vaccine. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts starts us off tonight with the president's latest promise or threat to send federal forces into cities as well to stop street violence. But the coronavirus briefing taking the priority. Good evening, John.
Good evening to you, Brett. They kept us guessing right up into the last minute who might come out with the president, but as you pointed out, it was the president solo for his first coronavirus briefing since May the 11th. The president optimistic about the prospects for a vaccine and the development of new treatments. The president also pointing out that the case fatality rate from coronavirus here in the United States is now lower than that of the European Union. The intention of all of this to present the appearance of a president on top of the situation.
2 vaccine candidates are entering the final stage of clinical trials this month. This was achieved in record time. It used to be years before you were in a position like we are right now. 4 other vaccines will enter final trials in the following weeks, and we're mass producing all of the top candidates so that the first approved vaccine will be available immediately. And logistically, we have the military ready to go.
And as President Trump moves to get back out in front of...
What did you hear there in the president, as mentioned, up there alone, but sounding like some of the people who were not in the room?
Yeah, I think he is finally realizing the seriousness of this. And I should say that tentatively, because before he also at various points sounded serious, sounded like he understood the gravity of the situation. Many of your viewers will remember in March when they got the Imperial College estimates, suddenly he sounded very serious that we really had to combat this thing. But that disappears in a very short time with this president. And it is quite worrisome, his ability to focus. And then once he's distracted by, economic numbers or something else going off and not harboring reality. I do note that it's Tuesday, and on Sunday he had that disastrous interview with Chris Wallace, in which he was just stating untruths and re-emphasizing things, and the data were selected for him in a very distorted way, and maybe the criticism has gotten to him, and he's becoming a little more serious.
Yeah, and whether or not one gives him credit or how we appraise it, Heather, the medical experts have told us there are some things that work here, like social distancing and masks. So having, low bar as it may be, leaders in government accurately reflect that would be the right direction. It's so late that so much has happened that people are rightfully upset about that. For your views, Heather, take a listen to the president here doing that 180 on masks, etc.
We're asking everybody that when you are not able to socially distance, wear a mask, get a mask. Whether you like the mask or not, they have an impact.
Heather?
This is 3 months too late and 30 or 40,000 lives lost too late. At a critical time when the question was, are we going to fully commit as a nation to slowing this pandemic, the president failed. He quit on the job and he betrayed the country. He gave political cover to protests that were trying to sort of destabilize the Republican Party's maturity on this issue. And it was successful. And so now we see the states that opened most quickly are now having tremendous spikes in cases. And we don't even have the Republican governors in Texas and Florida and Georgia doing the minimal basics that are needed to keep their communities safe. And all of that resistance to public health and science is flowing from the top. So no, I don't give this reality TV star any points for, coming on TV tonight for the first time in a while and saying what is very obvious to my, 2-year-old son, which is that you should wear a mask. The thing that we need to be doing right now is putting pressure on the Republicans in Congress, particularly Mitch McConnell and the Senate, to have an economic and public health relief package that matches this moment. And so far from what I'm hearing from the White House wanting to zero out the testing budget, the coronavirus testing budget, so that they don't get more numbers that could spook his election, his election forecasts, to them not really recognizing that they need to give states and localities funding to be able to prop up the economies and the public health systems that we all depend on. They're just not taking it seriously, and it's too late and not enough.
And Dr. Emanuel, we're going to put back up on the screen that
wearing masks, making fun of former Vice President Joe Biden for wearing masks when he goes out and holds campaign events. But the president at times was offering a more sobering analysis of where things stand right now with COVID-19, saying that he thinks and that the experts are telling him that it's going to get worse before it gets better in this country. And here's what he had to say about that.
Some areas of our country are doing very well, others are doing less well. It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is. It's what we have. You look over the world, it's all over the world.
But at the same time, Wolf, there are other points during this press conference where he was off script and he was saying things going back to his talking points that the virus is just going to disappear when health experts say that is just not the case, and also making the comment early on in this press conference that the U.S. has done much better than the rest of the world or most other countries around the world, when that is just not the case when you look at what's happening with comparable countries in Western Europe and over in Asia. At the same time, Wolf, we should note there were some big inconsistencies during this press conference. Earlier in the day, the White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, at one point said that the president is sometimes tested multiple times a day for the coronavirus. The president said during this press conference that is not the case. And one other thing we should point out, Wolf, the president was there solo at this press conference. He didn't have Dr. Deborah Birx. He didn't have Dr. Anthony Fauci. Fauci told our Jake Tapper earlier today that he wasn't planning on being at the press conference, that he wasn't invited to this press conference, and Dr. Deborah Birx was actually at the White House. And at one point, the president acknowledged to a reporter in the room that she was waiting outside of the briefing room. The president did not obviously want to have her in that briefing room and share the stage with her, somebody who is a public health expert and could pass on reliable information to the American people. One final thing, Wolf, the president obviously, when he goes off script, he sometimes can't help himself, and we saw that towards the end of that press briefing when he was asked about the case of Ghislaine Maxwell, the alleged accomplice of the dead financier Jeffrey Epstein and sex trafficking cases around the country. At one point, the president said in response to a question about that case that he wishes Maxwell well. Wolf, you can almost hear White House officials behind the scene, campaign officials across town tearing their hair out when they hear the president make that kind of comment.
Yeah, I'm sure they were. All right, Jim Acosta, thank you very much. So let's break down all the latest coronavirus developments. Dr. Ashish Jha is joining us, the director of the Harvard Global Health Institute. Dr. Jha, thank you so much for joining us. So in the president's briefing, this first briefing, about 3 months, he acknowledged that things will get worse before they get better, but he still seemed to be in denial about the reality of the challenges the country is still facing. What stood out to you?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It was good to have the president address the pandemic and the crisis that we are all in. I thought there were some parts that were highlights. I like the fact that he acknowledged the importance of wearing masks. I like the fact that he acknowledged that things are likely to get worse. Unfortunately, there was also, a certain amount of misinformation about how great America is doing, for instance, and how for many people, it's not a big deal at all. I think so. It's just that inconsistent messaging that's a challenge here. But I did think overall it was a step forward to start putting some more federal attention on this national crisis.
How effective, Dr. Jha, can these news briefings really be if the public health experts aren't included?
I think back to other presidents and other outbreaks that we've had, obviously nothing like this. But they have, while the presidents might have come out in the past, like President Bush or President Obama, and said a few words, they've been led by public health leaders like CDC directors or Dr. Fauci. That is really important. If I could do one thing to deal with this pandemic in our country, it would be to have a consistent public health message. And it's very hard when it's coming from this president.
The president did encourage, as you point out correctly, to wear masks. He said whether you like the mask or not, they do have an impact, his words. Is that a step, that is an important step in the right direction? Because all of the studies have shown that if 95% of the people, when they went outside, when they were with other people, wore masks, that would save thousands of American lives.
Yeah, wearing masks is one of the cheap and easy things that can really make a big difference. I mean, we've been struggling with getting our testing infrastructure going. We've got all these other issues. Wearing masks, relatively inexpensive, relatively easy for people to do. And if everybody did it, it would make a very large difference. And so that's been one of the most maddening things, is we have not had consistent messaging on something that is so effective and so easy to pull off.
He said, and I'm quoting,
with proven local business
Former Assistant U.S. Attorney and Fox News contributor Andrew McCarthy, in an op-ed yesterday, wrote how much wasted time on pointless investigations could have been prevented had Peter Strzok said this publicly 1 month into President Trump's term. Strzok wrote the comment next to a February 2017 New York Times article alleging contacts between the Trump campaign and the Russians. Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham released the documents to the public. In a statement to Fox News, Strzok's attorney wrote in part, Senator Graham's statement represents another attempt by President Trump's congressional lackeys to use Pete's work product to paint the Russia investigation as a political witch hunt. It was no such thing. And Pete's comments on inaccuracies in the NYT article were nothing more than a dedicated counterintelligence professional diligently vetting public reports of intelligence information. The declassification comes as U.S. Attorney John Durham continues his probe into the origins of the Russia investigation.
I think the American people expect indictments. I know I expect indictments based on the evidence I've seen. It's all starting to come unravel, and I tell you, it's time that people go to jail and people are indicted.
A DOJ official tells me to expect the Durham report to be complete before the end of the summer. That's 2 months from today. The clock is ticking. Brett?
More on all this with the panel. David, thanks. In tonight's Democracy 2020 report, Joe Biden is laying out new plans to spend trillions of taxpayer dollars if he's elected president in November, but it's targeted towards certain efforts. The total price tag for the promises is large, and it's only late July. He's laying it out in pieces, his economic plan. Correspondent Peter Ducey takes a look at the Biden wish list so far.
Joe Biden believes he can put millions to work in an instant.
They are shovel ready. The workers are ready now. These jobs can be filled now.
Caregivers, both professional and informal, are set for $775 billion taxpayer dollars of relief if Biden wins, as he tries to alleviate finances stretched thin during the pandemic he argues has been exacerbated by President Trump.
He's quit on you, and he's quit on this country.
The new policies Biden has rolled out in the last few weeks would cost north of $8 trillion taxpayer dollars, according to calculations done by FoxNews.com. That's an 8 with 12 zeros after it.
We can't afford not to do this. Now, Vice President Biden has put his pay-fors in his plan.
The money for this plan comes from rolling back recent tax relief for real estate investors at a time real estate markets are changing, with millions still working from home.
The way we pay for it is by rolling back unproductive tax cuts.
The Trump campaign argues, quote, just like the rest of the radical Democrats who have co-opted his campaign, the only thing Biden knows how to do is raise taxes, kill jobs, and pass regulations that strangle small businesses. The Democrat...
As opposed to an alarmist.
You're dealing with reality, as you would like to say.
I believe so. But then again, others have different opinions.
I mean, Ron, he's working hard. You've been in these kind of jobs. He keeps a smile on his face. He believes he's dealing in reality. The negative space in that painting would be who else is not dealing in reality? Ron.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really any responsible person in America who doubts that between Tony Fauci's view of this pandemic and Donald Trump's, one has been proven time and again to be correct, and one has been laced with fantasy, misleading lies, misdirection. And, Tony Fauci is a great doctor. He's a great public servant. I know how hard it's been for him to serve under Donald Trump. I'm glad he is, though, because I think he is doing his best to give us truthful information. And I think the single best thing Donald Trump could do is remove the White House gag that's placed on Tony Fauci. Let Tony Fauci go on TV shows, not just these kind of internet broadcasts that he's allowed to go on, but, you know, do the Sunday shows, get the information out there. Be honest,
Ron,
be
don't
truthful.
hate on the internet.
I'm not hating on the internet.
I bet your kids get plenty of news off the internet.
Yes, they do. But many Americans get their news from shows like yours, Ari, and thank goodness for that, too. And so, look, I just think that there should be no gag on Tony Fauci. He's a truth teller. He has helped this country deal with HIV/AIDS. He was a critical aspect of us fighting Ebola around the world. He's fought countless infectious diseases. He's a brilliant researcher. He's an amazing doctor. He's an incredible public leader. And the more we can hear from him, the better. Period. End of story.
Period. End of story. I think a lot of folks feel that way. It was definitely interesting watching that as well. I want to thank Ron Klain for being in one of these.
Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight.
100 years, we buy direct.
That around into the weekend with those highs in the 90s, scattered storms Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'll dry things out on Thursday and Friday. For Aberdeen and Marvin, here's your 10-day forecast. Lots of sun tomorrow, pretty nice day. Warmer, more humid on Thursday, a chance for some spotty storms. 90s Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Chances for thunderstorms Saturday through Wednesday, but notice we're only talking 20 to 30% chances, so mainly dry. And then a slight chance of a storm next Friday as well, but it's going to be staying very warm. Pier and Oneka, sunshine tomorrow, 86. Hot the next few days after that with highs in the 90s, small chances of thunderstorms, and we'll keep those 80s and 90s around with small chances of storms next week, Kelsey.
All right, thanks, Phil. Whether you want a loft or something more traditional, Sioux Falls is becoming an even more attractive place to live. Jody Schwan tells us why in the Sioux Falls Business Report next.
Call today for free information. Call 800.
Look outside the Beltway from a special report. We'll be right back.
This program.
Important. We have been tracking, I'm sure you know, protests all over the country. In some places, they went big and faded. Portland's a place where they have continued. And in those 50 days, according to Oregon authorities, most of the gatherings, most of the people have been described as peaceful. The Trump administration deployments, Oregon officials have repeatedly said, are actually not helping public safety. Now, that you could say is a clash between different government officials, but also take a look at this local reporting. This is courtesy of the Oregonian. It also shows the scale of this, because while on television and with politics you may hear it presented a certain way, the local coverage on this map makes the point that where you see protester-police clashes, it's in that little area in one little part of Portland, not a city under siege. Now, I also want to tell you, beyond that around the courthouse, several other things are important here. Congressional Democrats out of the Oregon delegation taking on this policy. They say it's not only intolerable, but the way the Trump administration is deploying these agents may even be illegal. So now you know the facts. You understand the stakes. And one of those very lawmakers joins me on this when we're back in just 30 seconds.
To wave weapons in a threatening manner at those participating in nonviolent protest. And while we are fortunate this situation did not escalate into deadly force, this type of conduct is unacceptable in St. Louis. Missouri's Attorney General says Missourians have broad rights to defend themselves, and he will enter the case just to dismiss it. And the governor says he will pardon the couple if convicted.
They had every right to protect their property, their home, just like any of us would.
I'm not going to be bullied. I'm not going to be intimidated.
The McCloskeys likely don't face real jail time, even if they were convicted. The prosecutor suggested a diversion program to avoid time in court. Brett.
Matt Finn, thanks. Up next, why some House Republicans want one of their own leaders to step down from leadership.
have happened. Tell your
days with which the 20th century
is offering non-stop routes to summer.
Experts on COVID-19, Dr. Anthony Fauci is emphasizing the importance of wearing a mask.
In a one-on-one interview with our sister station in Alabama, Fauci says it's very disconcerting to see people pushing back on health guidelines.
They seem to be forgetting that this is about public health. This isn't about authority. This isn't about individuals trying to tell you what to do with your life. We are all in this together.
You can watch the entire 17-minute interview with Dr. Fauci. Just click on this story on KELOland.com.
Congress is negotiating yet another pandemic relief package for cash-strapped Americans. The package is likely to include a payroll tax cut, along with funding that would be tied to whether schools fully reopen. South Dakota Representative Dusty Johnson says it's important for Congress to help provide stability during the pandemic.
I think additional congressional activity is needed on COVID-19. We still have a soft economy, softer than it should be. And frankly, we still have tens of thousands of people every day who are coming down positive with this virus.
Johnson says it's important to make sure the Paycheck Protection Program remains available and healthcare providers have the resources needed to respond to new coronavirus cases.
Well, let's get one last check of our weather with Chief Meteorologist Jay Trobeck.
All right, should be a real nice evening across.
Contact your Honda dealer today or shop online.
The alumnus, part of that calculus is that Cheney could emerge down the line as Republican leader or speaker. Now, there are only 13 House Republican women. Cheney is the only one with a major leadership position. Some Republicans.
Well, that's absolutely wrong. We are working as a community. I do not condone violence or destruction of property, but we have to address that.
This is still going on when you look at the numbers here in Florida.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really hard to believe. All right, Randy, back.
Outbreaks, plus what we're learning tonight about when the top vaccine candidates will be ready for use. New travel warning, more than half of the country now must quarantine when visiting New York. What you should know before you make the trip. China tries to steal vaccine research. The FBI puts out a wanted poster for 2 Chinese nationals charged with attempting to hack U.S. biotech firms. The link to China's government and what America is doing to protect our secrets. Campaign 2020, as the president resumes briefing the nation for the first time in 3 months, Democratic nominee Joe Biden slams his leadership.
You know, he's quit on you, and he's quit on this country.
Mystery deepens. CBS News has learned the anti-feminist lawyer accused of ambushing a federal judge's home was also targeting another female judge, and the possible link to another murder in California. The danger indoors. A new study warns air conditioning could spread the coronavirus. What you can do to stay safe this summer. And history on the diamond. A female coach who is truly in a league of her own.
This is the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Reports tonight, President Trump is now threatening to send federal officers to Chicago. Also developing what the president said late today about alleged Jeffrey Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. It made immediate news. The new and dark turn in the deadly attack on a federal judge's family, the suspect dressed as a FedEx delivery man, allegedly killing her son, wounding her husband.
Number of infections may be 13 times higher in some parts of the country. Now that means millions of Americans may have been spreading the virus without even knowing it. Tonight, with the situation worsening nationwide, President Trump is dramatically changing his tone and strategy. After months of ignoring the severity of surge in cases across the South and West, tonight for the first time the president said the crisis will probably get worse before it gets better. And he called for Americans to wear masks and practice social distancing, even saying that he carries a mask and wears it sometimes. But the president's Democratic rival, Joe Biden, said today the president had quit on the country and rolled out a plan to help families pay to care for children and the elderly. And in yet another sign of just how valuable research to find a vaccine is, tonight the FBI says it is hunting for 2 hackers working for the Chinese government who who tried to steal data from American and European drug companies. There's a lot of reporting to get to tonight, and our team of correspondents is standing by to cover.
Of course, the numbers that have been reported are already staggering. More than 141,000 lives have been lost, more than 1,000 more lives in just the last 24 hours, 58% of them in the South. More than 3.8 million confirmed cases, but that new estimate from the CDC could mean that tens of millions more Americans may have been infected, many without even knowing it. The study across 10 cities and states. And tonight in Florida, which remains the current epicenter, more than 9,000 new cases, 136 more deaths. One nurse telling us tonight her hospital has only one ICU bed left. Texas tonight also reporting more than 9,000 new cases, and in one Texas county alone, 85 babies have tested positive since March, and at least one infant has died. All of that driving the very real questions tonight about when and how schools should open. Congress today asking executives from top drug companies racing for a vaccine if they would send their own children back, and what they said. And so we begin tonight with ABC's Victor Akendo from Florida.
Tonight, that alarming new report from the CDC.
This is the date I was hit.
I lost my legs almost immediately.
African American women die from breast cancer.
Lasting relief. Xiidra is the only FDA-approved treatment specifically.
That's for Hispanic women.
Breast cancer is unacceptable.
Together with Susan G. Komen, we're committed to reducing U.S. breast cancer deaths by half.
And we're going to do it by 2026.
Failure is unacceptable.
President Trump's absolute grilling by Fox News anchor Chris Wallace has been getting tons of reaction, political, media, and otherwise. But we're also seeing, of course, the late-night hosts weigh in. Take a look.
He really believes this is going to go away on its own. Trump was like, everyone knows the virus will disappear, just like chickenpox and herpes.
It's not reassuring. When presented with evidence of a rapidly spreading disease, your answer is, show me the death chart. You know, because that implies there are enough deaths for a chart.
Some of these comics also keyed in on that moment when the President of the United States was basically invoking the fact that he passed a very hard cognitive test.
It's chilling to see the most powerful man in the world bragging that he passed a test that they give to people to find out whether they should be allowed to take the bus by themselves.
Just to prove Trump aced the test, he spent the rest of the interview pointing at things and naming them. That's a chair, that's a tree, this is a shirt, I can go all day.
Also, by the way, I don't know if it's the absence of a laugh track or what, but our late night comics, they look a little more somber these days in some of these appearances. And the last thing we want to show you is when Donald Trump, then also with the charts getting so much attention here, tried to use a chart to prove that he was right about those death rates. Well, it got this reaction from Trevor Noah.
And the funniest part about this to me isn't that Trump used a chart to prove that America has the best mortality rate. It's that even on a chart, it's still not true. I mean, if you just want any chart that's going to show how well you're doing, man, just go all the way with it.
Well, they get to use some words there that we don't on the news, but we wanted to catch you up on that. Now, when we come back, my big breakdown on what's wrong with the Bill Barr Justice Department.
To judge you on the ballot in November by how you've handled this pandemic so far?
I think the American people will judge us on this, but they'll judge us on the economy that I created and that already we're creating.
President Trump talking about coronavirus in his first briefing about the coronavirus in about 85 days. He did it solo, but he did it succinctly and took some questions as well. Let's bring in our panel. Maura Eliason, national political correspondent of National Public Radio. Guy Benson, political editor at townhall.com, the host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. And Kimberly Strotzel, a member of the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal. Maura, this was shorter than the previous coronavirus task force briefings, and obviously he was solo.
He was solo, it was shorter, he had a really different tone, masks are good. He was sober and realistic. It's going to get worse before it gets better. The fact that he did it at all, I think, sends an important message because he had pretty much moved on. The economy was reopening and wanted schools to reopen. He wasn't really talking about the virus much, But there he was, all by himself in the briefing room for only 35 minutes, I think.
Right, but the first part of that guy was really substantive. I mean, obviously he was reading from prepared remarks, but talking about the vaccines, the therapeutics, the numbers, the responses to governors, things that maybe the American people hadn't heard in a while from the administration.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's back, meaning the briefing, for that very reason. The pandemic is ongoing, it is serious, it is real, it is worsening in some places. And so I think it's worthwhile to have been doing this, frankly, so they've brought it back. I'm glad that it was succinct, to use your word, 30 minutes or so. He was roughly on time as well. I think that's probably a smart way to play this. I personally would have liked to have seen at least one medical expert there with him to field technical questions about various issues. And I know there weren't that many questions that were fielded by the president, but I'm sort of surprised that none of them tried to drill down on what he meant exactly by "it's going to get worse" before it gets better. That's a striking comment from the president, given that the death numbers really have come down overall. What does he mean by that? Maybe we'll get an answer tomorrow.
Yeah, obviously real questions about testing and how effective it is and what it means for opening schools. By the way, deep tease, we're going to have Dr. Birx on special report tomorrow on this show to answer a lot of the medical questions. So please email in or tweet me at Brett Baer with your questions. Kimberly, your thoughts on this effort today?
It felt to me very much like an attempt at a reset. I think a lot of people in the White House understand that there's an immense bully pulpit here for the president, one in which he can not only impart really useful, as you noted, information to the people, but also just to project an image from a political perspective. Look as though he is in charge, look as though he's doing what's necessary, a strong leader. Now, those prior events and briefings tended to spiral out of control of this at some point, so the fact that it was brief, that it was focused, suggests that there's been a rethink about how they might use this briefing to the president and the nation's benefit.
All right, meantime, Mara, there is another COVID bill that's in the works, but seems like it's being stalled a bit. Take a listen to Senators McConnell and Schumer.
To what we just heard from the president, also Republican divisions emerging on a new stimulus package. We'll be right back.
With vaccines, the Justice Department accuses China of sponsoring hackers who are targeting biotech firms around the world. CBS's Jeff Vcr on why this could set back U.S. research.
The FBI wants these two men charged with allegedly working on behalf of Chinese intelligence to target coronavirus research labs in the U.S.
The defendants were targeting organizations which were of direct interest to the government of China.
According to court papers, in January and February of this year, the hackers searched for vulnerabilities at a Maryland biotech firm, targeted the computer network of a Massachusetts biotech firm and a California company researching antiviral drugs to treat COVID-19. These breaches could potentially slow down critical research. Companies have to make sure that data hasn't been manipulated or altered in a way that could then jeopardize a vaccine and even put lives in danger. But the FBI says it is all part of a worrisome pattern. They currently open new investigations into Chinese activity every 10 hours.
China steals intellectual property and research which bolsters its economy. And then they use that illicit gain as a weapon to silence any country that would dare challenge their illegal actions.
But tonight, in response to the allegations made by U.S. officials, China says that it doesn't need to steal. It does its own research. Dora.
Jeff Vcr, thank you.
Said they want to see more money for testing. They want to send billions of dollars to the states so they can do more testing. And you probably saw Mick Mulvaney the other day said that his kids, it took them a week to get test results back. He said this is simply inexcusable given where we are in the pandemic. Do you think we have a problem with testing in this country right now? And are you in favor of more money for testing?
We've done more testing by far than anybody, but those numbers will be coming down. I agree. I think it's a good thing if we can do it.
Are you in favor of more money for testing?
If the doctors and the professionals feel that even though we're at a level that nobody ever dreamt possible, that they would like to do more, I'm okay with it.
Now, notably absent from the briefing just now, any members of the president's coronavirus task force. And when asked why not, the president wouldn't offer an explanation. It comes as the White House has tried to discredit health officials like Dr. Anthony Fauci, who today said he simply was not invited. David.
Mary Bruce tonight. Mary, thank you. We're going to turn next to the tense standoff in Portland, Oregon. New clashes tonight. Protesters facing off against federal agents there, despite the objections of the mayor and the governor. And now President Trump is reportedly threatening to send federal officers to Chicago. ABC's Kana Whitworth from Portland tonight.
Tonight, reports that federal agents may soon deploy to Chicago come as Portland is facing what could be its 55th straight night of protests. Overnight, demonstrators trying to break into the federal courthouse.
It's just before 3 o'clock in the morning here in Portland. Things are still going. There's so much tear gas in the air that my eyes are burning.
In a Nightline interview, the acting DHS deputy secretary saying tonight those security agents in Portland are within their rights to protect the courthouse.
This is a long established federal practice. It's well within the authority of the federal government.
But Oregon State is suing those federal agencies, and Chicago's mayor says they don't want those security agents, even if it's to help police fight crime and gun violence.
The Trump administration is not going to foolishly deploy unnamed agents to the streets of Chicago.
53-year-old Navy veteran Chris David says he suffered a broken arm at the hands of law enforcement in the Portland protests, and that he was shocked by his treatment.
I don't know who they are still. I don't even know what agency they are from. No names, no agencies, nothing.
David, the protests start out peacefully here every night and then gradually turn into chaos. The mayor tells me that it's the presence and actions of federal law enforcement agents that have led to an increase in violence and vandalism. David.
Kana Whitworth, who reported deep into the night for us. Kana, thank you. There is new reporting tonight on the deadly attack on the family of a federal judge. Authorities say the suspect was found dead, and tonight, is he connected to another murder? Here's Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, authorities uncovering disturbing twists as they investigate the attack on New Jersey federal judge Esther Salas' family that left her only son dead and husband in the hospital. Law enforcement sources revealing suspect Roy Denhollander is also being investigated in the killing of Mark Angelucci this month in California.
Mark was an angel here on earth, and he will be greatly missed.
Sources say the gunman in Angelucci's killing was dressed similarly to Denhollander, wearing a FedEx uniform when police say he opened fire on Salas' 20-year-old son Daniel and husband Mark Anderl on Sunday. A 2015 case in which Denhollander, a lawyer and self-described anti-feminist, represented the plaintiff was presided over by Judge Salas before another lawyer took over in June 2019. Authorities seen removing boxes from his New York City apartment. Sources say Denhollander killed himself in upstate New York on Monday. The names of a dozen others were found in his car, including New York State Chief Judge Janet DeFiore. 2 guns and cash were also found, sources say. North Brunswick's mayor, a Salas family friend, says the town is in shock.
Every time I would ever speak with Mark about Daniel, Mark's eyes would light up.
David, sources tell ABC News Denhollander had been diagnosed with cancer. Officials are now investigating whether these attacks were grudge killings committed by someone who knew they were dying. David.
Stephanie Ramos with us again tonight. Thanks, Steph. When we come back, the dangerous heat wave, and in some places even warmer tomorrow.
Of days not looking to be very active either across our area. Temperatures 70s north of Sioux Falls.
Be about governance. And now he's finally embracing, saying, okay, it's okay to wear a mask. So I think a good deal of what we have suffered is clearly the Trump virus.
So what you're saying is that thousands of Americans have died because of what the president has done or not done? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think it's clearly evident. We're approaching 4 million. We're approaching 4 million, in fact, people affected by this, infected by it. And a large number of, like 140,000 who have passed away. If it's important to wear a mask now, it would have been important to wear it in March instead of telling us that by April we'd all be going to church together. I wish that were the case, but had no scientific basis for that. And so if they don't return to science and governance, and that's a way that we can overcome this. We hope and pray for a vaccine. God willing, that will be soon. But when it's still months away, and people will die. So let's hope that the president comes closer to embracing the reality of this pandemic.
Let's look ahead.
Trump virus.
Because I know you had a chance to meet today with the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. You met with the Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. You're discussing the next coronavirus-related stimulus package to help the American people. First of all, what can you tell us about this meeting? Where do the negotiations stand now?
Well, I wouldn't call them negotiations. 2 months ago in 1 week, we passed the HEROES Act, which was a robust but necessary package to honor our heroes by funding state and local governments for their cost of the coronavirus. Secondly, by opening our economy, testing. Third, by putting money into the pockets of the American people, unemployment insurance, direct payments, etc. And then some other things. 2 months and 1 week ago, we worked a while on that legislation. Apparently, the Republicans weren't doing much except taking a pause. So what we said today, Leader Schumer and I said today, we have our offer on the table. It's called the HEROES Act. We need to see your bill to be put on the table. We have a great piece of legislation. They seem to be in disarray. I don't know when they will get their act together, but they've had plenty of time to be thinking about this, and this delay is unnecessary because by the end of July, unemployment benefits will expire. A number of moratoria on evictions will expire. Many things will expire that are addressed in our legislation. So let's see what they have to offer, then we can negotiate.
I know your bill, the price tag, you want another $3 trillion or so bill. Secretary Mnuchin is starting at $1 trillion. How do you bridge that between that $2 trillion difference and reach some sort of compromise?
We will. But it would take us about $1 trillion to do state and local. It'll take several $100 billion to open up the economy by testing. And it's over $1 trillion to do the unemployment insurance and the direct payments, which they know that we have to do. I think that they've been talking more about, not in this meeting, I don't want you to get that impression, but others have said something closer to $2 trillion. So they're getting warmer.
When it comes to more money for testing, which is so critical, so crucial, the president just said at his news conference, he said he's okay with it if that's what the doctors and the professionals feel is needed. Is that what you also heard during your meeting today, that there will be a lot more money for testing?
Well, let me just say this. Our first bill, March 4th, was about testing. We've had it in other bills since then. They have not implemented it properly. We're so long overdue. We talk about not wearing masks all spring, but we haven't been testing to the level that we should have been to really address and defeat this virus. So it's not just about putting more money there. It's about getting the job done. And to do that, you need equipment. You need equipment to test. People are waiting because there's not enough equipment to get around to everyone who wants a test. Secondly, you have to have equipment to analyze the test. It's no use taking a test and then find out a week later or longer whether you are positive or negative. It's obsolete already. Let's do it in 24 hours, 48 at the most. You need equipment to do that. And to do all of it, including opening our schools and ministering to the needs of people who are sick, we need PPE, personal protective equipment. So equipment to test, equipment to measure the test, and equipment to take care of meeting the needs of people. We just don't have enough, and that's one of the reasons why we're so far behind in testing, no matter what the president says. On this subject, he really distorts the number. He doesn't know, doesn't care, or just decides to make up a number. But we do need the Defense Production Act to be implemented by the President of the United States to say we need the equipment that we need to open our schools, to open our economy, to fight this virus.
Madam Speaker,
the Trump virus.
What do you tell the 20 or 25 million Americans who are about to lose that $600 weekly unemployment benefit? It goes away at the end of this week. And they're
evidence of criminal wrongdoing that in terms of conspiracy with Russia, but it found that Russia did interfere, that Donald Trump welcomed the help, and took various measures to try to cover up his campaign's contacts with Russians, maybe not Russian intelligence officials. So those findings are still true. Whether the Senate investigation can continue to come up with things that undermine the basic premise, that leave a conclusion that the investigation, Mueller's investigation, should never have been begun, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions here that we have yet to answer. Here's Senator Lindsey Graham.
How could it be that they continue to use the dossier in April and June of 2017, knowing that in January the dossier was completely discredited by the person who put it together? Here's the question for me. Did the intel analyst who wrote the memo tell anybody up the chain, oh, by the way, our case just fell apart? I find it almost impossible to believe that the senior people at the FBI were not told that in January 2017 the case fell apart against Carter Page.
Now, Guy, we are literally the only network covering any of this because it's just nowhere, even though think about how much oxygen was spent covering Russia and collusion for years and years.
That's exactly the point I was going to make. 3 years, this was a singular obsession among many in the media, bombshell o'clock almost every night, every twist and turn, and now it's kind of unraveling in a very serious way, and these developments are nowhere, crickets among many of our competitors, and I think that is very revealing.
It is very revealing. We'll continue to cover it, and we will see if the Durham report comes out. And Kimberly, you think it will?
Yes, I do think it will, but watch more immediately for there to maybe be some indictments. That's really what he's there to do.
Yeah, and whether a grand jury is involved, we'll follow all of it. Panel, as always, thank you. When we come back, the brighter side of things, some good...
All kinds of interest, audience records, etc., with her account of her uncle.
Have you heard the president use the N-word? Yeah. And anti-Semitic slurs specifically? Yes.
That was noticed. Donald Trump, who is notoriously ratings obsessed, may have kept track of the fact that that interview, which, yes, was here on Rachel Maddow's show on MSNBC, broke ratings records with over 5 million viewers. That made it the most watched thing on all of TV, including primetime broadcast TV. Now, as that legal fight is occurring, there's another convicted felon out talking without concern about any free speech situations because he's not going to jail anymore. And that, of course, is Roger Stone, who did this victory lap in classic Stone style. You see him right here when he discussed Donald Trump, who, again, after Bill Barr went and tried to help the initial sentence, then commuted the whole thing anyway.
So the president has saved my life, and he's given me the opportunity to fight for vindication, to fight for my exoneration.
You have Donald Trump's actual handwriting on that one. This isn't the first time that Trump and his allies meddled. It was, again, and this is important, Bill Barr that first tried to save Donald Trump from even having to commute the sentence and got all kinds of criticism from legal experts, also the resignation of 4 line prosecutors, then 2,000 other prosecutors. 2,000 said Barr shouldn't have this job anymore. He should
aired, so many of you helping Deborah. $300,000 in donations in the first week. Even schools helping. Wyoming Valley West Middle School raising $5,000. And the smiles when those sneakers arrived.
Hi, David.
And tonight, Deborah with the new numbers.
Since last July, when you first aired our story on America Strong, we shipped over 2,600 pairs of sneakers to troops deployed to combat zones and imminent danger areas.
She is now shipping 300 pairs of sneakers a month to Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Donations from all 50 states.
Hey, David.
Tonight here, Corporal Ethan. He can't reveal his location or last name, but he tells us the need has been even greater this year because of the pandemic back home.
With COVID-19 restrictions, I was having a real hard time finding a new replacement pair. I'm so appreciative to have. Thank you.
Hey, David. Specialists Ryan, Daniel, and Morgan, too.
These sneakers provided us motivation and morale.
Thank you, Sneakers for Soldiers.
Hi, David.
And this from Master Sergeant David.
Back home,
Things aren't great right now. We got the pandemic going on. Just knowing that we're not forgotten while we're out here serving makes the time go by so much easier.
Hi, Mr. David.
And for the families back home, like Mom Shanina and her children, Lauren, Gavin, Colin, and Alyssa, a thank you.
I want to thank Sneakers for Soldiers for remembering our special soldier. Thank you for sending not only him, but his entire unit sneakers. We appreciate you remembering them while they're away from home.
And tonight, her husband, First Lieutenant Tony, with us too.
Hey, David, those boxes arrived and we opened them up. I'm talking about adult soldiers, men and women, smiling like Christmas.
And this evening, one more gift for Tony, a message from his family.
Hi, Daddy. We miss you. See you soon.
Thank our troops. Thank you for watching. And more importantly, thank you for jumping in so often to help after our reports. Good night.
Zona, and this is CNN.
It's news when you want it.
Have a yabba dabba do time on MeTV.
Yabba dabba do. Have a yabba dabba do time. Yabba dabba do. Yabba do time. Yabba dabba dabba. Yabba dabba dabba. Yabba dabba dabba.
Right here on MeTV, Sioux Falls 13.3.
You don't have to wait until 10 o'clock to get your local news. Tune in for Dakota News Now at 9. Weeknights on CW Sioux Falls. Dakota News Now. It's news when you want it. The First Alert Weather Team is working around the clock. Look.
August marks yet another return to school, but this year there is a lot more at stake. Students will go back to class for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic.
Nationally, parents and educators are weighing the safety risks for kids as cases surge in several states. South Dakota isn't seeing the same increase as other states, but COVID cases are holding steady.
And that is why a local school district is asking for your feedback about how to keep students safe and whether they should be required to wear a certain barrier that has become a culture clash in America. Couple Lines Brady Mallory gives you a closer look.
Students are used to questions in the classroom, but now the Sioux Falls School District wants answers from the parents. Well, should the district require students and staff to wear face masks or just encourage them? That's one of the questions on a survey the district is sending out. The survey will help inform the district's Return to Learn plan. School begins on Thursday, August 27th. The district says it'll follow CDC guidelines and recommendations to keep students safe. In addition to questions about face masks, the district also wants to know if parents plan on sending their kids back to school in the fall. If not, the district is looking at alternatives. The survey lists a program called the Sioux Falls School District Virtual Academy. The Virtual Academy will be an online option for students not returning to traditional school. Elementary and middle school students will be able to take core classes like English Language Arts, math, science, and social studies online. High school students will have access to online courses that meet the South Dakota high school graduation requirements. According to the survey, students and families will be able to connect with district certified staff at least twice a week for questions, feedback, and progress reports. The district is looking at 3 different methods of education this fall. Traditional, what it calls modified on campus, and remote. It says this will allow it to pivot between them as more public health information comes out. For a closer look at the survey, we've included a link under the story on KELOland.com.
Now, students and teachers in the Harrisburg School District are getting a better idea of what to expect when they head back to class. The district has sent out a 27-page document. It lays out what will happen if a student or teacher tests positive and how the district will respond if there's community spread. The district is taking several steps to allow social distancing, like staggering the time when students can leave school and limiting the number of people who can be in the library at the same time. The district will also require kids to walk on certain sides of the hallway. Initially, masks will be recommended for students. If a student tests positive, they will be required in hallways and on school buses.
Well, from Harrisburg to Hovind, our KELOland.com producers have been collecting information from districts all across KELOland. They have put together a database showing how different districts are responding to COVID-19. If you'd like to see your district's plan, just go to our Pandemic Planning in School story.
Imploring young Americans to avoid packed bars and other crowded indoor gatherings, be safe and be smart.
The president also asked why he has sent mixed messages on masks, tweeting out a picture of himself wearing one for the first time yesterday, and then hours later captured at a fundraiser at his hotel without one.
I have no problem with the masks. I view it this way. Anything that potentially can help, and that certainly can potentially help, is a good thing. I have no problem. I carry it. I wear it. You saw me wearing it a number of times, and I'll continue.
He also addressed why nearly 6 months in, testing is still falling short.
We've done more testing by far than anybody. Some of the tests, because it is massive volume, it takes longer. Others of the tests, as you know, are very quick. They're 5 minutes and 15-minute tests, and those are, frankly, the ones that I prefer. But we're doing massive numbers, and the numbers are coming down.
The one moment the president veered off message when he was asked about Ghislaine Maxwell, accused of enabling Jeffrey Epstein's exploitation of minors.
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach.
Tonight, the president's rival, Joe Biden in Delaware, sharpening his attacks.
You know, he's quit on you, and he's quit on this country. But this election is not just about him. It's about us. It's about you.
Now, the president's shift in strategy comes amid a slump in his poll numbers. It's not clear if he'll continue to do the briefings alone. Dr. Anthony Fauci said he was not invited to this one. Lester.
Kristen Welker at the White House tonight. Thanks. With the pandemic hitting the U.S. especially hard and Americans clinging to the hope of a vaccine, the nation's top vaccine makers offered some credence to the president's sense of optimism, suggesting a vaccine could pass FDA scrutiny late this year or early next. Here's Tom Costello.
At the University of Maryland Med Center today, more volunteers rolling up their sleeves for a COVID-19 vaccine trial, this one run by drug giant Pfizer. So far, 138,000 volunteers have signed up as drug companies race to stop the virus that's already claimed 600,000 lives worldwide.
So the race is on, not against each other, but against this virus.
At a virtual congressional hearing today, executives from 5 leading vaccine developers said they're all in various stages of testing, some now entering human trials. Even before FDA approval, Pfizer, Merck, AstraZeneca, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson all plan to ramp up production to meet global demand. Some members of Congress are concerned the White House could try to fast-track a vaccine.
I want to make sure that you will guard against any pressure that comes from the FDA either to lower its standards or to approve something that you know doesn't meet the standards.
We are working around the clock to accelerate our development, but we are not cutting corners on safety.
Among the volunteers in the Maryland Pfizer study, Cynthia Sikorsky, who received 2 doses in June, though she doesn't know if she received the vaccine or placebo. Have you had any side effects?
I had just very mild side effects after the first vaccine, which consisted of very mild chills. But other than that, really none.
65 years old and in good health, volunteering, she says, is the least she could do.
I felt it was something that I could do to help fight the coronavirus.
In the U.S., the NIH is looking for 30,000 volunteers for each vaccine trial. The sign-up link on its website uses a network Dr. Anthony Fauci built decades ago. Volunteers receive a stipend and either a vaccine dose or a placebo. Lead researchers say it's critical to enroll minority volunteers since COVID has disproportionately affected those communities.
We certainly aren't out to coerce any populations, but we would like minority populations to have full access and full advantage of participating in these trials if they wish to do so.
Depending on the vaccine, researchers say we'd probably all get 2 doses, and the FDA is likely to approve more than 1 vaccine.
The first vaccine might not be the best vaccine for seniors or for children.
The FDA requires all vaccines to be at least 50% effective to receive approval. 4 of the 5 drug companies received taxpayer money to find a vaccine.
Today, 2 of those companies told Congress they will offer the vaccine for free or at cost. Lester?
Tom Costello tonight. Thank you.
Though Glenn was initially speechless, he did say it puts all the appreciation for his hard work and many years of service into perspective. A multi-million-dollar project is underway at the Aberdeen Airport.
He is saying it should be.
So, Lisa, what about what's next? The Republicans had said that they might have a draft plan as early as today. What's it looking like now?
Well, we are in extraordinary times, and it was an extraordinary day at the Capitol today, Judy.
People he's considering for vice president. Do you know whether you are one of those 4 women? 4 black women?
I am not going to speak for the Vice President, Joy, and I appreciate you asking the question. I'm honored to be in the conversation, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure Joe Biden is elected the next president of the United States. And every conversation you are having every night with all of these leaders makes so clear why.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is incapable of leading our country during any time, and in particular a moment of crisis. Joe Biden has the experience, he has the will, he has the desire and the ability to lead our country through this crisis and closer to the ideals which we hold dear.
Last question before I let you go, Senator. There are a lot of people out there who have also talked about the idea of they would love to see you be the Attorney General of the United States. You put yourself sort of in the mindset of an Attorney General. Do you believe that some of the things that we have seen happen in the streets of Portland, the deploying of secret police, the caging of children, and the corruption that we've seen out of this administration, do you believe that this administration has engaged in criminal behavior? And do you believe that the next Attorney General should investigate members of the current administration, including Bill Barr, including the President of the United States?
First of all, we need to win the election, and there is no guarantee we're going to do that. I'll tell you, Joy, that it concerns me when we see the polling and people get a little happy and at least a little comfortable with it. 4 months is a lifetime in a campaign and in an election cycle. We first have to win, and that's going to be about encouraging people to vote, registering people to vote, fighting against those states that are suppressing voters' ability to get to the polls. It's going to be about also making sure that people are healthy and that they have jobs and that we are building back up the economy. These are the things that are in front of us right now, and certainly that's where my focus is on trying to get Mitch McConnell to put the HEROES Act on the floor for a vote to make sure that we deal with the fact that people are about to fall off a cliff by the end of this month in terms of the benefits that are going to expire. That's where my head is at.
Senator Kamala Harris, I had to ask. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being here this evening.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
You take care. Thank you.
You too. Thank you very much. And joining me now is Eric H. Holder.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, sir. Good to have you.
Thank you.
So joining me now is DeRoy Murdoch, contributing editor for the National Review Online and a Fox News contributor. DeRoy, always great to have you with us, too. I heard Judge Napolitano earlier today saying that he sees a constitutional conflict in this, that when the mayors and the leadership do not want the federal officials to come in, that constitutionally they're not allowed to do so unless they've been requested to come in. The states have precedents there. What do you say about that?
Martha, great to be with you. Yeah, I don't see any constitutional problem here whatsoever. Now, if President Trump sent in people from DHS to enforce jaywalking and write parking tickets, that would be a problem. These people are defending federal property. Specifically, they're defending the Hatfield federal courthouse. You know, you've heard throughout all of the George Floyd protests and so on, no justice, no peace. This is actually a place where people go to get justice. This is a place where people are accused of crimes go to defend themselves. And rather than honor a palace of justice, which every American left, middle, and right should respect, these people are attacking it, setting fires, breaking windows, launching fireworks at this thing. And unfortunately, the police department of Portland doesn't seem to have any interest, or maybe the cops do, but the city leadership has no interest in defending this federal property. So federal officials have to come and do so.
Other folks who live there who would like to see things settle down as well, no doubt. I want you to listen to this from MSNBC political analyst John Heilman, talking about the way he reads what's happening with these federal agents in Portland. Watch this.
I don't want to be overly alarmist about this, but I think this is the time to be alarmist, knowing where Donald Trump stands right now politically, understanding where we are headed in this election. I think we were looking at potentially a trial run for a kind of a genuine attempt to through intimidation and potentially through force to try to steal this election.
What do you think about that?
Totally alarmist nonsense. Look, the idea that the left has been pushing that somehow there's going to be a military coup or something like this if President Trump loses the election, this is again about defending a federal courthouse. The Secretary of DHS, Secretary Wolf, was just on. I heard his press conference about 4 o'clock today. He said a couple of times, he said, let me reiterate, the department fully supports those who wish to peacefully protest. Let me say this again, we support and will protect those who want to peacefully protest. He said it over and over and over again. These are not peaceful protesters. These are criminals, vandals, arsonists who are trying to, in effect, engaging in the destruction of federal property. It's about defending our taxpayer-owned and operated federal property from people who are there to destroy it. We saw just a few days ago, they set a fire in the police union's office in Portland. If these people had their way, that entire building would burn to the ground, just like they burned down the police precinct in Minneapolis. And our taxpayer-supported DHS agents are there to defend our property as American taxpayers. That's perfectly appropriate, legal, and has nothing to do with any kind of an attempted coup or any nonsense about which MSNBC is fantasizing tonight.
So, DeRoy, what about the big picture question of whether or not the president is politically right, given, John Allen was talking about where he is right now in the election process. Should he allow these democratically led cities who say, we don't want any help from the federal government to sort of, fall on their own hunches on this, given that they are the elected officials by the people there?
Well, look, I guess he's found a really good sweet spot where he's basically, again, defending federal property over which he has domain. And if the rest of the city of Portland wants to fall to pieces, I guess they go and do so. You saw in Seattle, they had that the Chaz or Shop area. The city let that place completely go to hell until a couple people got killed, and then they stepped in.
That's right.
But I think as far as federal property, it's absolutely appropriate for him to defend that. It belongs to the American people, not to the rioters and anarchists and vandals and radicals of Portland.
This is James Comey, who...
What he'll do for the time period between the election...
Is televised conflict Trump's goal? He writes, what better way for Trump to demonstrate to his followers that he is, quote, your president of law and order, than to deploy highly visible federal officers and in a way that is sure to invite violent conflict, which of course demonstrates the need for a law and order president. What do you make of that?
Well, I think, again, the violence is coming from these criminals who are doing things like setting off bottle rockets. They're shining laser beams into the eyes of our DHS agents, which can cause permanent ocular damage. I point to them and say they're the ones who are creating the violence. The DHS said very clearly they have peaceful protesters, about 100 or so, who show up. They go home about 11 o'clock or so, and then the violent criminals show up at midnight. They've done this 53 days, and they show up by thousands and just trash the place. Graffiti, broken windows, attempted arson, actual arson, as we saw at the police union building just a couple of days ago. Yeah. So I wouldn't blame the DHS, which is in a defensive posture. I'd blame the aggressors.
Well, he's saying that the president's doing it on purpose, because he thinks it'll look good for his election. And that the president, by doing so, is inciting violence that will then create a need for a law and order president when people vote in November. Last thought.
No. Well, again, I think the violence is being incited by far-left Marxist radicals. They're the ones doing the violence, and the defense of our taxpayer-owned property, the Mark Hatfield courthouse, is what the president is doing. The alternative is, he could stand back, let the courthouse burn to the ground, and then the same people who are attacking him for doing this will say, oh my God, he stood back, he wasn't engaged, he was not focused, he let the place burn to the ground, how dare he? So no matter what he does, these people are going to scream and yell and attack him. The left has one gear, which is just attack Trump, and it's just forward top speed at in that gear all the time, no matter what range you're.
But just hours after tweeting about COVID patriotism, he peeled back that mask in a crowd full of people to reveal his true identity. When the readout continues.
Servpro, our
day and night until the sun turns blue. But they need to stop the gun violence.
Experts say this summer's surge in violence is due to a perfect storm of the pandemic and widespread anger against the police. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you. And with the school year fast approaching, summer camps have been viewed as a test run of sorts for getting kids back together in groups. But after an outbreak in one major U.S. city, camps there are shutting down. Here's Stephanie Gosk.
With school districts scrambling to get ready for the first day back, whatever that may look like.
A reality check on what is possible in Miami.
We're going to be closing all of our summer camps effective this week.
Park-run day camps shut down early after 4 cases of COVID were discovered among campers and staff. Many educators see summer camp as the canary in the coal mine for reopening schools, and there have been mixed results. In Missouri, 82 kids and staff got sick at an overnight camp earlier this month, even with extra safety measures in place, like health screenings, voluntary self-quarantine before camp began, and new air filtration systems in cabins. But at the Hideaway Day Camp in Pennsylvania, success.
What has worked the best for us is keeping those campers in a controlled environment. So in very small groups, rotating together and away from other groups.
So when 2 campers tested positive for COVID, only those children and staff had to be quarantined. But camp is not school.
Most of your activities are outside. Most of school's activities are inside.
For sure. I think it's going to be quite the challenge.
Facing those challenges will take smart plans and money. Today, the Senate Majority Leader proposed $105 billion for schools.
Their educations depend on it. In some cases, their safety depends on it. And so do the livelihoods of working parents.
But some teachers are worried. Florida's largest teachers union is suing the governor over his order to reopen schools 5 days a week.
They're saying they want to open up these schools, but yet they're not putting more funding.
Governor Ron DeSantis said on Monday the aim of the order was to give parents options, including remote learning if they prefer. While at Hideaway Day Camp, the benefits of being with other kids are obvious.
I was ready to do something different and get out of the house. And I think they are thrilled, overwhelmed, and we're kind of seeing them come back to life.
For the school year, that's a goal everyone shares. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
Up next, the NFL's plan as the new season fast approaches.
I am extending our special. How nice it is.
Our teachers will want to get back to work.
In fact, just this morning, Miami's mayor announced summer camps there will be closed after at least 3 children tested positive for the virus.
And we just got some new numbers out of Florida where hospitalizations have risen 37% in just the 12 days since the state started releasing daily hospitalization data. And even though more than 50 hospitals in the state say their ICUs have reached capacity, Governor Ron DeSantis said at a roundtable today, we're turning this thing back in a good direction. Kate?
Tina, thank you. Out front, for some more perspective, out front with me now, Dr. Aileen Marty. She's a professor of infectious diseases at Florida International University. She's an advisor to the mayor of Miami-Dade County. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Marty. I really appreciate it. I want to ask you first about this alarming data from the CDC that there's likely many more cases of COVID out there than we know about right now. 6 to 24 times the reported cases, depending on where you are. We were thinking about it just to paint a little picture for everyone. Back in early April in South Florida, there were 10,500 reported cases. But as the CDC suggests, in South Florida, it's likely at least 11 times worse than that. That would mean something like more like 117,000 infections. I mean, what does that tell you? What do you do with that?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of things we have to consider. And when you look at the CDC study, the CDC is conducting a number of different serological studies. The one you're referring to has a particular set of limitations that are very important for people to recognize. Number one is it's a study that's based on blood that's coming from a number of different places in the United States and going to 2 labs and then going to the CDC. And it's from people who are hospitalized or going to the hospital for routine checkups. So it's not the general population that's being looked at, and that's an important thing to know. The second thing is the ELISA test that was used to do that study also has a little bit of an ability to detect some ordinary coronaviruses. So there's a tiny bit of problem from that as well. But even with all that I'm just telling you, it's still an incredibly important study and very significant in terms of the total population of people that have been infected with this virus. But it's still way below the total numbers that would be significant if we wanted to talk about herd immunity, which is not something I'm even sure we can ever have with the SARS-2 virus.
Yeah, it's almost like you would hope that there'd be a silver lining with it, and everything we're hearing is very unlikely that it would get to that herd immunity level at all when we think of this virus. Florida set a new record today for for the number of people requiring hospital care for COVID. As Athena Jones was saying, in just 12 days, hospitalizations have risen 37%, and 11 hospitals in Miami-Dade County alone are out of ICU beds. But I want to play, with that in mind, what the governor said today. Listen to this.
We've got a health system that's working. We've seen, obviously, the hospital censuses really stabilize in most parts of the state. Some of them have even declined, which is a good sign as well. So I think that, we're going to get through it. I think we are on the right course.
From your perspective right now, is the state on the right course?
From my perspective right now, we are in a desperate situation. Here in Miami-Dade, the number of admissions per day continues to go up. And as you mentioned, our use of hospital beds, ICUs, and ventilators is at critical levels. And we are bringing in respiratory therapists, physicians, nurses, nursing assistants to try and get these patients taken care of. But it's extremely challenging.
The European Union approved a plan today worth $2.1 trillion to help member states through the pandemic recession. After a marathon 4-day meeting in Germany, the bloc's strongest nations agreed to share the debt. Weaker states will get grants that do not have to be repaid. The package must still be ratified by all 27 EU members. In Ohio, the Speaker of the State House, Republican...
Elation brought on by COVID-19. Not everybody has been able to get in on the action. Make no mistake, we've seen several rounds of rainfall move through KELO land. Areas that have been able to get in on some of that rain, such as the Southwest, have certainly needed it. The Southeast and Northeast, however, have been lacking in the rain department as of late. The last...
Moving. Now is the time for a new bath from Bathfitter. Every bath...
At night, without staff present, the conversations have been a sort of safe space where the governors can ask their counterparts for advice, just whispering, discussing best practices, and if the mood strikes them, vent about the administration and the president's erratic leadership. So basically, they're sneaking and having secret conversations rather than confronting him or just doing the right thing by their public. What is happening?
Well, Joy, they're afraid of the president personally and politically, but some of these governors actually want to govern. They got elected to try to help the people in their state, and they have a conscience, and they know that there's a pandemic raging that's taking lives, that's devastating the economies in their states. I'm thinking of people like Mike DeWine, the Republican governor of Ohio, and they want to try to do right by their state. Larry Hogan in Maryland, another Republican who's trying to do the right thing here, and they are exasperated by the mismanagement in the White House and the lack of focus and discipline and national strategic direction from President Trump. And, they're trying to get together and put some solutions together privately because they know if they were to have these public brawls with the president, it A, wouldn't save any lives or help them in their state, but B, they would face a political backlash from the president's loyal supporters who are everywhere. They're a minority in this country, but they are a majority within the Republican primary electorate in a lot of these states.
Is there anything happening in your reporting in the Republican Governors Association, and how are governors like the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, or the governor of Georgia viewed by other Republican governors? Do they see them as cowards? Or do they see them as doing the smart political thing?
Well, I think there are mixed views, of course, among all of the governors, but certainly they've been out front in making those really early decisions to reopen, which in retrospect, most of the public health experts will say were tragic mistakes. The virus has ravaged those states and continues to do so, and those governors have really struggled to gain any control or to exert sound leadership in the assessment of most of the health authorities who've been watching the decisions they've been making.
Yeah, Dr. Davidson, just the final question to you. Dr. Anthony Fauci was asked about the briefing an hour before it happened. He said he wasn't invited. Do you think it would help you dealing with your patients if he was the person speaking about the pandemic?
He absolutely should be the voice. He's the most trusted individual. He's been there 32 years, advised 6 presidents, and he's an expert. And he speaks not with politics in mind, but with public health in mind. And these governors who need guidance, they should look to Dr. Fauci. They're spending Now talking about sending teachers and students back into the classrooms without having the testing regimen available to keep us safe. They've been pushing and pushing and pushing to keep the economy open, to push it further, and we're seeing the spikes, as Mr. Rucker said, coming up in the South and just raging. And we need the public health people to take control.
Phil Rucker, Dr. Rob Davidson, thank you both. Please stay safe. Really appreciate your time tonight. And still ahead, thank you. Donald Trump's persistent use of racist rhetoric is a big problem, but it's not the biggest problem. Biggest problems are the official policies that follow suit. Stay with us.